G'day, folks. Down under Sigmar, you're here with Anthony and the coach. Well, I am the coach. I've got a split personality tonight. Forgetting who I am in previous episodes. I think it's the loss of the beard, Liam. What do you think? Do you reckon my brains might have been attached to the beard?
I think so, because I think since you've lost majority of the beard, I think you've lost majority of the brain. So you need to grow it back, and then the brain grows back as well, just like the human body develops as a child.
So for anyone who's listening to the podcast, now that we're on podcast form, I have shaved my beard off in the name of Movember, raising money for men's health and all the great things that they've been doing. 11th year that I've been growing a moustache and raising money. If you want to donate, there is a link in the episode description. But the beard has gone. I had the beard for over 12 months, actually probably since last November. So
I think you shaved it for interviews and stuff earlier this year.
Trimmed it down.
Trimmed it, yeah. And then its full growth came in, I think about 4 months ago. So yeah.
Got a nice beard shampoo and kind of massage it and a comb. And Kieran,
looked wise. Yeah.
Our guest here, Kieran, looks like he's never shaved a day in his life. Kieran is from the Lords of Ruin. A very competitive, awesome gamer. I should do the introduction before he starts giving me shit. Kieran is notorious for writing really hard, strong lists. Most recently doing 166 depravity points in one game at Sydney GT with his Slanesh. Very balanced army. How are you, Kieran?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's funny you mentioned shaving. I actually shaved yesterday, just in preparation for this. But
I shaved yesterday in preparation for today. Amazing. I shaved an hour ago, and I'm already growing stubble.
Oh god!
Wow.
So this is your channel debut, Kieran. Do you want to give the internet a bit of an introduction on who you are and why you're here today?
So yeah, I'm Kieran. I'm part of Lords of Ruin. Just really like Age of Sigmar and just Warhammer stuff in general. Just been playing Warhammer since I was a little kid, and just past year I've really gotten into the Age of Sigmar competitive scene and met some wonderful people like Anthony and Liam. And just it's just been a blast. It's been a roller coaster. Learning lots of stuff.
Look, you're already on the show. You don't need to suck up. You can say that we're a bunch of turds, although we are club mates. So watch what you say.
I'll do my best.
I remember playing. I think it was this time last year with your death list.
Yeah, GamesCube. Yep.
Yeah, and that was just and I was just this is busted. Hell no. And that was when and that's when my true love for Grimgosh Reapers really grew, Anthony. It's all thanks to Kieran.
Thanks, Kieran. And look, Kieran, I've always been impressed. One of the things and one of the reasons why I had to get Kieran on the show was that something that Kieran does that nobody would know outside of our games club is that for every tournament that the Lords of Ruin attend, especially because we announce our round one matchups well in advance, Kieran will actually do a deep dive analysis for each person out of nowhere about the strengths and things to look out for and some synergies. And he's very, very smart when it comes to looking at an army, breaking it down to practical advice, which is why I thought he was perfect to talk about competitive list building and really understanding how to get the most out of your book. I will address the pink elephant in the room. There was meant to be Mick Creighton. However, Mick from the failed charge got called into work literally 2 minutes before the episode goes live. I've thrown out a couple of shouts to some other competitive players. They may drop in. Otherwise, it is going to be Kieran, Liam, and I talking about competitive list building. There is a lot of questions. We shouted out to our Twitter, to Discord, to Facebook, and a lot of questions have come in, and I'm sure the chat is going to throw up some more questions as we go. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm quite scared of these questions, not going to lie. Super scared. But yeah, I'm excited for this. Let's do this.
So before we get into that topic, we should probably just do a bit of a roundtable of what's happened lately. It's been 2 weeks since the last episode. We've obviously had the Runax team event, which was a 4-person team event, 24 teams up in Brisbane. Awesome event run by Gabe and the failed charge were streaming the event, which was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was awesome. Really good setup as well. And they were like, looking back at it, it was a pretty cool stream, what they've done, which was cool. So yeah, it was an awesome event. So yeah, killer trip.
Kieran, you've recently been playing? I think I saw you won maybe the Games Workshop Liverpool. Would you come second in the final?
I came first in the store files. I was running the Celestin host, and it's as broken as everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, good.
Let's just put it that way.
Glad you came to a Games Workshop event and you ruined faced with that.
How to say? I just love how like when the rules showed up for that like host, and everyone's like, "That seems busted," and everyone's like, "Nah, it seems okay." But then someone actually took it out and just went, "No, it's busted."
I will say, having not many command points sucks, but yeah, the double depravity, man, Jesus.
That makes up for it.
Look, it doesn't matter. Shooting is back. We're going to shoot Slaanesh off before they even get into combat. So who cares about your Locust? I'm going to shoot you off the board. KO is going to win CanCon 2020. We know all roads lead to CanCon. Kieran is freaking out right now, thinking about all of those Endron riggers and maybe some skyhooks into the face of a couple of heroes.
Maybe I won't take Slaanesh just in case.
Sweet.
What else has been happening in the past 2 weeks? We got a new army announced.
Yeah, so the night before, actually no, it was the day of Runax. They announced. What did they announce, Liam?
They announced the best looking Chaos Warriors and Chaos Knights I've ever seen, plus a guy riding a lizard, or an iguana, whatever you want to call it. It's ginormous iguana. It is beautiful in so many ways, and not gonna dive into it because I have like another project in the mind, but like, God, those models are cool. And also those are really cool Blood Knights as well. So anyone asking for plastic Blood Knights, they came out. So yeah.
And they are DIC approved. No longer do you need to use the high elf Dragon Princes for your Blood Knights. Look no further than new Chaos Knights. Go get them. They look great.
All you need to do is just
I think
it, and then
they're the last army that was needing a battle tome as well, I think, right? Like, is that right? Because I think this they're the only.
I think so. It is tying all the marauders and stuff into it, so I think it is the last battle time. Till then, now it's just like redoing, let's say, Kharadron or whatever.
Kharadron, Seraphon, Zench, maybe.
And then can we also talk about the Majestic, because it is technically AOS, the Majestic Llama that they also like announced?
I was going to say, because Kieran is a cat guy. It looks like very much like a llama sphinx cat. Kieran, you're going to add that to your...
yeah, but I don't think my other cats will like a new competitor on the field, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally understand. But yeah,
the felines in this house. Yeah, they're amazing. It's great to see, because they're already like good models, but they've just updated them, kept the same aesthetic. It's wonderful. I mean,
do you think we're going to see a lot of the new Slaves to Darkness at CanCon?
Yes, absolutely. It's literally just painting time would be the only deterrent, but like those models are amazing.
It's not even seeing the new models. It's more like the fact that there's going to be a supported battle tome for the people who had like Undivided Chaos, just to be like running it, or you could start seeing people take like more mortal heavy like Slaanesh or Nurgle or Zench and Khorne. Like you could start seeing like Slaves to Darkness Khorne maybe. There's some cool buffs going on there. So yeah, like I reckon this book is definitely going to bring it in. And also I'm really keen to see what they do with Archaon, because he's a model and rule, like he's a great model. His rules don't give his model justice, in my opinion. So you do
the big rumor is a Ren 2 sword, some other changes to the War Scroll, but obviously nothing's confirmed.
Yeah, like I played an Archaon at Runax, and I thought it was weird that my Kernel Hunters with size, who are just like half the size of him, they were doing Ren 2 to him, and he has Ren 1, and he has a big sword that slays heroes. I'm like, this does not make sense, but we'll go with it.
Well, I mean, there's that Deepkin hero that has, what, a Ren 5 or 7 artifact in the book? Yeah, something ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, Volturnus, yeah.
How does Volturnus have a Ren 5 and the Slayer of Kings, the destruction of the old world, has a Ren 1 sword?
Power creep. Anyways,
do you think, before we get off the Slaves of Darkness, do you think this is an army that people will just rebase from the old world into the new world? Or do you think it's going to entice people to start a new Slaves to Darkness army?
Kieran, go.
I guess both. Like, I've kind of got an old Slaves to Darkness collection. Like, it belongs to my brother, but like, I'm looking at just rebasing them and just having another army to play with. But yeah, those new models, I'm like, they look so much better. I just want to use them instead, you know. I think it'll be both for sure, just because they fit right in. So they're not going to look out of place if you add them in. And yeah.
Do you think the Warcry warbands will slot in properly, or do you think it'll be more like the Underworld's warbands, which are in theory sound good, but no one ever really runs the Underworld warbands in a competitive list?
I guess it's hard to say because I haven't really looked at the Warcry band's current rules, and so I haven't seen them at all. So I assume like they might get an update, and maybe we'll see them. But yeah, it's hard to say.
Liam, what's your prediction?
It'd be cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome.
So, hear me out. So what we're going to see is we're going to see people like Beasts of Chaos. People who had a Beasts of Chaos army, they rebase their models, right? So we'll see that group.
Yeah,
that's what we call the OG people. We love those people.
So shout out to the likes of Sean Ratcliffe, Travis Cooper, Hayden Walker's even running Slaves to Darkness right now. There's a bunch of them out there. So shout out, you didn't get on the bandwagon.
Yeah, so like those guys, they're literally going to be like, cool, this is great. I got to support a battle tome. Let's do this. I don't need to buy 5 other battle tomes to run this stuff. Let's do this. And then you got the people who are like, I always want to run an ever-chosen army, but it just doesn't make sense to be competitive. So you're going to see people who are going to rock up and buy Archeon and some Baron Guard and a Gaunt Summoner, run the battalion probably that has like, you can do whatever you want with the priority. And then you'll start seeing them like do some cool Slaves of Darkness stuff.
And we are seeing the playtesters running around with a whole bunch of Baron Guard. So
I reckon they're cool. Again, they're really cool models, and it just sucks that we can't see them due to their current rule set. Again, just doesn't do them justice. Like you can't give them a keyword or anything unless Archeon's on the table. So that's what I'm really excited about, is to see all those models that are really cool just to be on the table. And it'll be really cool to see some of the monsters as well kicking in as well. Like, yeah, I'm just excited, really. And then to answer your question about the Warcry, they're really cool rules, really cool models. And I reckon you will see them as like little support units, kind of like similar to like what you see of tree revs in a way. Like they're just like one small unit of them just to harass or just to hold objectives for dirt cheap. If that makes sense, because I don't think points-wise they're actually that expensive.
Because you did have your Marauders back in the day, which you get them in blocks of 10, and people would get a lot of blocks of 10 of those Marauders, and they obviously changed that to be blocks of 20. Maybe this could be the MSU type, small blocks of battle line or harassing units.
Yeah. Well, we're starting to see that now with Chaos Warriors. Chaos Warriors now for 90 points for 5 models is a bargain for 10 wounds. And they just chill at the back kind of thing. Then you just spam whatever you want. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. I reckon most of the armies now, to be honest, with the new battle tomes, have actually pretty much gone MSU. Like we're seeing it with like the new Bone Daddies. We're seeing it with Deepkin, kinda. So like some of the new supported battle tomes and stuff have all gone MSU.
Just ignoring Cities of Sigmar and Orc Warclans.
No, they got 30 blocks of Phoenix Guard just chilling, so they're not really doing MSU.
Who would run a block of 30 Phoenix Guard? I wouldn't. And also shout out to Craig Anderson, who's OG Ever Chosen as well. He's been running Archeon and for a number of years. So shout out to anyone who's been running Slaves to Darkness. We love you that you've persisted, and finally you have been rewarded. So I'm very excited to see Archeon, the protagonist, hopefully taking over from Nagash a little bit. And seeing where the world takes us, whether it's going to be light elves, shadow elves, who knows? There's still rumored Tomb Kings coming. I know some people got upset about the Bone Daddies, but there is still rumors of Tomb King. So who knows? Light skeletons.
No.
Who knows where Archeon's going to take us?
Who knows? Nagash has been doing pretty good, so I think this is probably the time where it's going to be Age of Chaos again. So Archeon's time again, because like, let's be honest, when Legion of Nagash book came out, it was like we saw a massive creep of death come in, and Nagash was taking over quite heavily. So this probably might be the time, and it's around the same time this year actually, when Nagash kind of like took over. So probably it's Archeon's time to reign, which would be kind of cool, which I'm super excited about. So yeah,
it's been a long time. A long time, and Craig Anderson does have the best ever chosen player record, and he's got the badge. So check out the rankings. He is legit.
He is OG.
As soon as I announced the Slaves of Darkness thing, I tagged him immediately, like, dude, come on. That's what you've been waiting for.
So we were with Hayden Walker. He's in our team, and we're staying at his house for Runax, and he was running Slaanesh Light, which was essentially Slaves to Darkness with the markings of Slaanesh, and I know he's really excited. So let's look forward to seeing what the release looks like in December. Could be a nice little change to the meta.
Oh, it'll be refreshing, that's for sure. But
anything else for the battle coming up this week? I know, obviously, this is a Sigmar podcast and show, but those sisters look incredible.
I'm not gonna lie, my wallet is just like either picking like a download festival ticket or Sisters of Battle, so I'm kind of like hurting right now. So yeah, like they're just awesome, and that box that they're releasing for it is amazing value, from what I can tell. So yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff. Really good time for Games Workshop this year with all the releases they've done. I don't think they've actually had a fault of a release. I don't think they have. So yeah, which is good.
I would have liked some endless spells and a terrain piece, but
for your Cities of Sigmar?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Come on, man. Everyone else.
Where's the frozen Let It Go gift when you need it?
Let it go, let it go,
let it go,
let it go, coach. You have empowered spells.
And also you ignore spells on a fucking 5-up.
That's one allegiance. And all right.
Hang on, wait. So Kieran, can I just ask you something? What would you rather? Endless spells and a terrain piece, or 5 different ways to play your army?
Like 7, isn't there?
Okay, there we go. 7. What would you prefer?
7 different ways to play.
Thank you very much.
All right, I'll be curious to see what the chat and our listeners think. Would you rather a terrain piece and endless spells, or would you prefer some different builds? Let us know what you think.
Liam is on a roll.
All right, since Liam is actually winning an argument for the first time ever, I'm going to sidetrack and not only thank all of our Patreons who have helped keep the lights on and keep me fed and not homeless on the streets, but I really appreciate their support. We've also got a whole bunch of events coming up. So Castle Assault, you and I, Liam, are going up to Newcastle this weekend. I think the following weekend we've got Arena of Blood up in Rockingham, and we're doing a list review next week with Dan Cochran. We've got Masters coming up at the end of the month. We've got HeroCon, which is an event which is run across multiple platforms or game systems that raise money for our service people. So check that out if you are up in Brisbane and you're looking for an event. And then obviously Call to Glory, which is the world's largest Age of Sigmar event, 244 players. Actually, Clint breached his cap. He didn't realize that he went over, and now he is waiting for people to drop out, or he has to go 144 and play nice with the tournament organizers. Liam, what are you running at CanCon?
Okay. The goal is Bone Daddies. And I need to work out my outfit for that weekend. So yeah, like pretty much the goal is Bone Daddies. See how I go this month with painting wise. And then I think in December I have like 2.5, 3 weeks off work. So that'll probably help me out quite a bit. But yeah, hopefully they get Bone Daddies really. Yourself, man, you gotta take your cities and where your
let's ask our guest first. We got a guest. Kieran, what are you gonna run?
I can't see him right now because I'm in like my face right now.
Kieran, what are you gonna run? And chat, what are you gonna run? What are you guys running?
I actually am looking at running Bone Daddies too. just jumping on that bandwagon, I guess. But if I can't get him done, it'll probably be Slanesh.
It's not bandwagoning when it wasn't there originally. It's just jumping it on the cool train. That's all it is. It's no such thing as bandwagoning.
No, that's a good way to put it.
I love Robert Lewis's comment, by the way. He says he would choose depending on how phallic the terrain piece was. And I know Liam, the Bone Daddy himself, has a huge phallic terrain piece. Very, very, very phallic.
Yeah, God love it.
And to answer your question, I will be taking Cities of Sigmar. I don't know if I'm going to take the Hello Heart or Hammerhall or Grey Water Fastness. They are the three that my free people, free guild most identify with.
You know what's really good? Anvil Guard, because War Hydras become battle line.
Yeah, but that's very elf. So, and my army is not elf.
Convert it. Didn't you? Hang on. Sorry. Okay, just to let everyone know who's listening and watching. Magro has bought elves. He bought 30 elves. What did he do with those elves? Magro, what did you do with those elves?
They're all free guild. If you want to see, go onto my Twitter, go onto the AOS Coach Facebook page. There will be photos up there where I've converted my free guild, my Phoenix Guard into free guild. So I've green stuffed the comet on their chests. I've kit bashed the living bejesus out of them so they don't look elf, or as little elf as possible. And they are magically charged humans. So, thanks.
You know what's magically charged humans called? Elves.
Nah, they're not.
At that point, he is.
And you just upset all the Dungeons and Dragons players because that is not correct. What is correct is we have a whole bunch of new Aussie content that's come up, and because of the rage of Liam last fortnight, I have included Notorious AOS, our friends across the ditch. So, last episode I got crushed because Liam said we should be talking about them, even though they're not Australian. They are absolutely our big friends and our brothers. So, Notorious, check them out. They put a really cool podcast out around Masters. Heralds have put out a episode around Adventures in the Cities of Sigmar. Failed Charge put up the videos of live stream from the Failed Charge. Dubin Darkness has got his Doomcast out. Measured Gaming's been putting out a bunch of bat reps. They've just hit number 50, and I really enjoyed the Bone Reapers versus Ironjaws. Cinderfall Gaming had a really interesting episode. That title is incorrect. It's actually a video with Andrew, our friend who looks like Gotrek, and his Molten Heart Free City, so a bit of lore. And tomorrow night I am recording faction-focused Cities of Sigmar. So we're going to deep dive and try to tackle this amazing, huge, complex book. So stay tuned for that one. Any other podcasts, any shout-outs you guys want to make from that hashtag content creators?
No. I'm just thinking, like, so anyone else? Can't really think of anyone else, really. What else have I been watching? I've just been like listening to like people just talk about Bone Daddies and watching Bone Daddy reports. It's been great.
And speaking of Bone Daddies, in 2 weeks' time, we'll be recording a Bone Daddies episode. So yourself and Matt, the Mayor Tyrrell. So you guys will be doing the faction focus.
Yeah, I really need to find time to play like 3 or 4 games before we do that. So let's get on that.
Let's not do any Matt's hammer on that. Let's actually provide value that we're not making shite up.
Liam making shit up? Never. Anyways, but yeah, no, I'm super. It's been a great time with the content creators. There's been so many people, which is great to see. So
by the way, I've got to call out Merchant Prince, who said the ideal scenario would be to delete the elves from Cities of Sigmar and then give us endless spells and terrain. I would accept that.
No, I would not accept that at all. Elves have life too. They have souls. They're not.
Except I do want to use my Frost Phoenix, but convert that into the Ice Queen of Kislev. I've talked about it a few times. So maybe I do need elves. Maybe I boot the dwarves. I don't know. I feel like I need the dwarves less.
Can I just say, what is the most durable unit in that book? What is the most durable unit in that book?
Flagellants.
Okay, no. It's called Phoenix Guard. And now what are Phoenix Guard? What is their keyword?
Humans.
Elves. Elves. Now, what is the most awesome hero unit in that book? I'm pretty sure it's a Frostheart Phoenix with an anointed one on top.
Hurricanum.
Okay, but what does the Phoenix get for spells? +1 to save.
Yeah, you're gonna get +1. Anyway,
It's almost like elves are amazing.
and we got
Eternal Guards. Eternal Guards are really good.
and Eternal, yeah. So we got all right. There's a bit of elf love happening in the chat here. I feel like I have the wrong. This is Liam is like a broken watch. He's correct twice a day, and this is one of those 2 times. Should we stop talking smack and should we get into the topic of the week, which is about competitive list building?
Yeah, because we have a lot of questions.
We do. We have a huge amount of questions. There's going to be more questions probably coming from the chat. So if I don't get to the chat straight away, guys, we will bring that up as much as possible. We were meant to have Mick Creighton here. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it because of work, called out in the last minute. But Kieran and Liam, you guys are going to be our 2 guests here. I'm going to add value when I can. But, Liam, you have gone to the Masters. You've qualified for the Masters and attended twice. So you are a very competitive player and a very good player, especially outside of the meta. You've run Sylvaneth, you've run a whole bunch of armies that aren't just the meta. Kieran, yourself, you run not only meta armies, but really quirky lists, and you're also someone who adds a lot of value to other people when it comes to building, and you're wonderful in this space. So you guys are our SMEs. So I'm going to start off with, and Kieran, I want to set the scene. 2 episodes ago, we had F the meta, fuck the meta, and that was about building armies that were about fun and focus and enjoying your narrative and not worrying about what people think about your army, just running what you love. Ash McEwen run the Devoted of Sigmar, Luke Stone runs the Scourge Privateers. We have people who run Darkling Covens. We've got all these armies that aren't that good on the table, but these generals are either exceptional, the army is exceptional, or they're doing what they love. This episode is the opposite. It's about how do you build a strong competitive list that is going to set yourself up for success. You're going to crush your enemies. You're going to drive them before you. You're going to prepare the best you can with what you've got. Liam, are you okay?
That sounds like we're just crushing kids' souls.
Look, if you are competitive, you absolutely could crush people's souls if you want to go out there and run 3 Keepers of Secrets and make no friends. But competitive doesn't have to be, winning no sports votes. There's a spectrum, right? It's about getting the most out of your army. And there's some interesting questions about, do I have to just run Slaanesh, for example? Or we're picking on Slaanesh because they are the top tier. They've got a 60 or 80% win rate according to LLV's Honest Wargamer stats. So they are a really good army, but just one of many.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene. Are competitive and narrative armies mutually exclusive, or can you have a narrative competitive list?
I think no, they're not mutually exclusive. I think you can absolutely have both in the same kind of spectrum, I guess. Like we were talking about Phoenix Guard earlier. Phoenix Guard are amazing. Phoenix Guard with a Frost Heart Phoenix making them even tougher are even more amazing. And that's narrative right there, and having like elf support for like cheaper battle line, whether it's like say Dread Spears or Bleak Swords, Dark Shards, range support. It's all elven themed, and like that's something you can just build a narrative list out of just right there. Just Caesar Sigmar, and it's like, another example would be say like Change Host, Hordes of Horrors, backed by a Law of Change. That's how a Zench War Host would fight, and that's thematic. I can't finish my sentence.
No,
but yeah, you get what I mean.
Yeah. So like, pretty much, they can be like, you can write a list where like it makes sense for that way that army is in the narrative, and then it can still be competitive, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's like 4 Keeper of Secrets chilling in a war host of Slaanesh, just messing people up. So.
But we've seen examples like Liam yourself. You CanCon 1 or 2 years ago, you ran that Ironbark list, and you were able to drive a narrative within that, and you were trying to exploit some broken rules. You were being cheeky with the skyhooks, but there is a battle. There is a story within that, whether you're willing to admit it or not.
Yeah, look, that list was pretty much to prove a point that you can like run. Like back then, I was just proving a point that like Sylvaneth doesn't need to just be Naruto. That was literally what I was doing, and I literally was like, "What's another busted thing that I can do? 30 Arcanaut Company of Skyhooks and a Chemist is definitely something that I would do," and that's what I did. And I played that list for that weekend, and it did well. But another example was like, remember, I think it was like earlier this year, I ran Flesh Eater Court's Holomorn, which no one runs or looks at. Like, not one person even looked at Holomorn. Everyone's like, Holomorn is like useless. It's just either Gristlegore or Blisterskin. And then Dan Brewer, Chris Welfare, and those two were talking about like what Holomorn did. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And I ran that 9 horror list at Sydney Slaughter and stuff. And I went 4-1 with a list with just like no striking first, shenanigans, nothing. It was just 49-inch threat range horrors. Like that's what I was running. And it was narrative because like the whole thing was based off like the horrors and stuff and everything. I was like, cool, let's do this. And I made a competitive list out of it. So they can be mutually like neutral in the same thing. So yeah,
they don't have to. You don't have to. And I think this is a question that comes up with the listeners is that, you know, there's a concern that if you write a competitive list, you sacrifice the models that you love, or you don't get to run the things that you really want to run because you're trying to bring this, you know, absolutely optimized list. And that's not necessarily true. You don't have to go down that route. You absolutely can if you want to. And if you look at things like the ETC, which is a competitive event across the world, they ask you to play different armies. You may not get to play the army that you want to play because it's going to improve the competitiveness of the team. But it's a spectrum. You can be super crazy and just take the best of the best, or you can still form that narrative and get the most out of your battle tome. Is that a fair call?
I'd say so, yeah. There's the thing with AOS as well is the narrative is so new and it's so malleable that you can basically do what you want and say it's thematic, and you can point to a book and say, yeah, it lines up with what I've read and stuff like that. And you can build an army out of the models you like, the models you think are cool, and it can be competitive. Like, I like Keeper of Secrets. They look cool. They're amazing. And I built an army out of them, and yeah, it does well. And it's models I like. I don't like Hordes of Demonettes. I like all the heroes of Slaanesh, and that's just a list archetype that happens to work. And just making what you want to work, like actually work, is rewarding. It's super rewarding.
So how would we define a competitive list? So, you know, a couple of episodes ago we defined that narrative list, but how do we define what a competitive list is?
Do you want to take it, Liam, or do you want me to do it?
You go.
Okay.
You go.
So I would say a competitive list is, I guess, a list that's designed to perform well to the expectations you set. So your expectations could be, let's say, if you go into a tournament, it could be to put up a good fight in all of your games, not necessarily to go 5 from 5. You're not too concerned about the results. You just want close games. Another person's definition of competitive might be going 3 from 5, like finishing in the upper bracket of the results. Another person's definition could be go 5 from 5, win the tournament. It depends on what you want, I guess, to get out of what you're building. So like my Slaanesh, I'm aiming for them to do like a 3 or 4 out of 5 game like wins. That's what I'd aim for with them. That's what I want them like competitive wise. Whereas my Sylvaneth, I play them a bit differently. I'm more like looking to just do decently in every game, not have a match where I just get absolutely stomped, you know?
Yeah, and that's fair. Like my goal, you know, since I attended Masters and I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of becoming really competitive and getting to Masters and doing well at Masters with the Free People Allegiance of all things back in 2017, I know that my goals have changed and it's been more about winning more than I lose. So going 3-2 at a 2-day event, but making sure that, you know, my sports scores and I'm having fun, I'm getting to know people. They're always my goals. But Liam, before we move on to the next question, I'd love to hear what you think about what is a competitive list.
So what I find as a competitive list is a list that can deal with much of your meta and also deal with any scenario that you get given. The biggest thing ever for me when running a competitive list is if it can tick a few boxes for me, if it can go up against any hero-based scenarios, any objective holding scenarios, any auto-win scenarios, and any scenarios where it's about movement and trying to get to the other side as quick as possible. Right? That is generally my checklist when it comes to like what is a competitive list, and then also dealing like when it comes to scenarios, and then also can it kill heroes that I need to kill? Can it do this when I need to get to here? Can I do this? Can I do this? If I can tick all those boxes, that is what I call a competitive list. If that makes sense. If I can tick all those boxes, and then that is.
How did you learn that you had to do X, Y, and Z?
Playing a crap ton of games. That is literally how I did it. And also going to heaps of tournaments. Like 2017, I have to say, probably was the most I've ever been to tournaments. Like I was going like once or twice a month, and I was constantly playing, and I was learning very quickly what I need to have in my list, if that makes sense. And like I was playing Sylvaneth, and I quite quickly learned that like, cool, I need heroes that can stay on objectives for the hero-based scenarios. Okay, cool. I need a unit that can hold on to like, I can hold back for knife to the heart and everything else move forward. I need this, I need that, I need this and that. And like learning all that. And then now when I was doing that, every time when I start a new army or a new project, I would always be like, okay, can I tick these boxes? And if I can't, then no, I can't. That's not a good list for me, if that makes sense. Like I literally got by that by literally playing crap ton of games, and then also every time a new GHB comes out, the first thing I look at is all the scenarios to see how they hold and how they like do well. For example, Durali the Death now is just this huge thing about battle line holding objectives. So like, yeah, I need a massive block of durable battle line units just so I can be like, cool, if that comes up in the scenario pack or gets drawn in, I got an answer to it, if that makes sense. Yeah. Or like, can I wipe out those like plague monks, or can I do this? Can I do that? And if I got all that sorted, I'm good to go. So yeah.
So just to summarize what I heard, it's about experience. So I think it's fair to assume that if I've never played a game of Age of Sigmar, or maybe I'm on my first 10 or 20 games, and I attend my first tournament, it's probably very unlikely that I'm going to go 5-0 at a major tournament if I'm only learning my army. So expectations is absolutely key. I'm hearing practice is important, and understanding those victory conditions, understanding that if a tournament or even any of the General's Handbook scenarios say that you've got to have more models, or you've got to have a hero or an artifact, or you win by claiming X amount of objectives by turn blah. Thinking about, can I get to this objective at the back? Is my army fast enough? Do I have any teleporting? How would I get there, and what would I need to do? And if I don't, how do I build that into my list, or how do I handle that in a situation? Kieran, you're nodding.
I agree with everything.
So that obviously comes with time, and then also that's the analytics behind looking at what makes up a game.
But like the other thing I want to clarify is like when it comes to saying what is a competitive list, like you could literally, let's just say we get like let's get 3 different types of players. You got like your casual player, you got your tournament player, then you got like someone like in between, right? And if you, let's just say, let's show Kieran's list, right? And you show like, this is my list. The casual player is going to probably nod being like, oh, okay, that seems cool, right? They don't know exactly what the term competitive is, right? But then the other 2 probably be like, that's a really competitive list, because from their experience, they know that that list has all those things that like that toolbox, if that makes sense. Right. So, and then just there, the competitive list is also like, how would your opponents like see? So like one huge thing that I do when I write lists is send it to my gaming group and be like, hey, what do you guys think? And you generally would either see the words fun, competitive, or what the hell were you thinking at 3 a.m. So like, that's the other thing with competitive lists. Like you can't just be like, I wrote a competitive list. Like you need outsource help in a way to be like, do you guys think this is competitive? And here other pretty much getting feedback on like, is this what it is? And that's why we got like really cool tools like the Honest Wargamer list thing that he does, and also the Grand Alliance, and also those Facebook groups where you can be like, hey, like that's a huge thing with like when it comes to like running a competitive list, is also seeing if other people be like, I'm actually quite scared of that list,
All right, well, you've ruled one of my questions, which was what are the resources that are available to you? And Liam, you've just summarized. So the Honest Wargamer has people writing lists and explaining their lists. You've got wonderful Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups where you can say, hey, this is what I've built. What are your thoughts? You know, is it going to work the way I think it's going to work? Obviously, your games club. Kieran, anything else that you would call out from a resource point of view that might help you get across the meta, get across the scenarios, get across your army list?
I mean, yeah, Liam covered it pretty well, and like I tend to use the Grand Alliance, and I also just ask feedback off all the people I play against locally and all my friends and stuff. So, because they usually will go like, I mean, because you play against them, they can tell you, hey, that seemed pretty strong, or hey, that seemed pretty weak. Maybe you should change that.
Yeah.
Yep. Asking for feedback after a game. Gary or goddamn Gary says sliding into my DM. So if you know a competitive gamer, you've got a friend in the games club or on Twitter or in the local community, or hey, you see someone perform really well at a tournament, you might want to ask them for feedback or get their insights on the way their army worked. I know I was really interested in how Tom Worsley won Blood and Glory with a very interesting Halo Heart list that probably wouldn't be the one I would like to run, but definitely wanted to learn the mechanics. So they're constant learning. I would say things like there are a whole bunch of people who are out there on YouTube, on podcasts who are talking about battle tones, whether it's you're worried about Slanesh and how it works, or you're worried about I don't know, Deepkin. Channels like myself, like Facehammer, like there's so many people who have done battle tone reviews that get across opponents' armies.
Yeah, like there's quite a lot, and there's a few people like on Twitter and stuff that are just so happy to get sent messages. Like I get sent messages like every 3 or 4 days. I check my other box and I get random people from the Sylvaneth group being like, "Hey, fix my list." I'm like, "Okay, cool."
You're just so popular.
So I'm just killing it, man. I should start charging. Nah. But yeah, like there's just some resources. Like there are people out there who are so happy to help, which is cool.
All right. But so when you build,
go for it. I was about to ask the next question, but that's all good.
No, you're the guest now.
Okay.
You're filling in for Mick.
Okay, cool.
So do you guys have a rough guide on if I've got 2,000 points or 1,000 points or whatever the game that I'm playing? 2,000 is the traditional, most common pool of points. Do you have a rough guide or how you would spread those points out across, your battle line, your heroes, your behemoths, your spells? Do you have some rough thinking or some guidance around how I best spend my points?
I would say that question's always going to really depend on what army you're playing. So like Slanesh, for example, because I've been playing them recently, they tend to want to go extremely heavy on heroes, like max out as many points possible on your heroes, and not go too heavily in your battle line, because your heroes are kind of what carry the day for you. That's what all the summoning mechanics are based around and so on, where most of your hitting power comes from. The battle line, you kind of looking at this on a Shami, not so much as attacks, but more as screens, objective holders. And on the flip side, say for Aussie Arc Bone Reapers, the new guys on the block, I look at them and I go like, they're probably, you don't want to invest over much in the heroes. You probably want to go, say, and I'd say this is probably what most armies typically would do. You'd want somewhere between, like, say, 400, 700 points in heroes, just to kind of fill whatever roles you need doing, whether it's like casting, various unit synergies. Battle line, if you've got really good battle line, like Mortec Guard, for example, going heavy into them is pretty good. And other stuff like Kurnoth Hunters, say for Sylvaneth, Immortus Guard, Mortec Crawlers, like depending what army you're playing, the support elements, your big hitters. It kind of depends. Do you need more bodies in your list, or you need more hitting power? And yeah, like it comes down to what faction you're playing ultimately, because it can vary so much.
Yeah, and like you look at a Daughters of Cain list, you've got lots and lots and lots of bodies traditionally when you got a couple of support heroes. On the flip side, you look at I don't know Deepkin, and the most competitive builds right now are very small allocation of points into their battle line, and most of them into their eels, which is that elite, not battle line kind of hard-hitting unit. So, Liam, your thoughts on this one?
So pretty much, I call heroes battle line and other top, middle, heavy, bottom. So every time when I receive a list or whatever, I just go like, oh, it's a bit too top heavy, a bit middle heavy, a bit bottom heavy. The way I distribute it is actually, again, what Kieran said, which is different armies have different reasons for having those lists. So let's have a look quickly at like a Nurgle list, for example. Nurgle has like your great unclean ones. Like let's look at a typical Thricefold. Super top heavy because all your points are going to go into that, and that's what you want. And then you just go min-max battle line or whatever, and then just add in the bodies and stuff there. Like that's what I call like a really balanced worth of points. Even though points-wise, you're probably way over the 1,000 points in heroes and stuff, because like that's what you want to do with like the 3 great unclean ones and stuff. And then like you just go cool min and man max, right? And that's like what you want to do, because that's what the army, the way you want to play it, if that makes sense. So distribution can be whatever you feel like your flavor is for the month. Another good example would be my Sylvaneth list, which is actually quite bottom heavy, where I spam over like, I think it's over 1,000 points of Cone of Hunters. Like that's, and 2 very different armies, 2 very different lists, and 2 very different play styles. So it very much all depends. And actually one of the armies, in my opinion, that actually is the most balanced from all 3 sections, from both top, middle, bottom, is actually Daughters of Cain. Daughter of Cain actually has an even distribution of points allocation to all 3, because you're spending points in heroes for your Slaughter Queens and your Hags, and then also like either Marathi or a Medusai. Then you go heavy, pretty much you do like 2 blocks of 30 of your sisters or your witch elves, and then like 10 for the other. And then you put in like snakes and harpies at the bottom, and it's really balanced out. If that makes sense, because
I would say Legions of Nagash are no different. You probably have
Legion of Nagash
heroes, a block of skeletons, some elite Morghasts or some Grimmies or
But those 2 armies right there, they are really good all-round armies. Like for example, Daughters of Cain are really good at prayers and spells, and then like Legion of Nagash is really good at spell casting stuff. So like them at the top, that's a nice even distribution, and their units fulfill their role really well, like doing damage or holding objectives. Like that there is that. So pretty much the best way to describe it is the distribution or your stuff. It all really depends on the army that you play, and also your playstyle heaps. Like if you want to go full aggro, get all your hammer units down pat and just go min max. Like that's how you want to do it, and then just again practice. But like that's how I distribute it. It all depends. The first question is, what do I want to do for my playstyle? What army am I running? And like how quickly do I want my games to go? And then that pretty much decides on your distribution of the things, because like, and as I said before, you look at scenarios. So you do need to go a bit top heavy for heroes for those hero scenarios, like have backups.
Yeah. So if your tournament pack has Duality of Death, it has some type of hero-based mission, you absolutely want something that can hold on to an objective for as long as it can.
Yeah. And then also with Duality of Death now being battle line, you go, cool, I need a big block of something. So when I get to that objective, I can hold it for at least 2 or 3 turns, while my other hero can hold it for another 2 or 3 turns. So I have a fighting chance. So that there is pretty much like, yeah. So like when it comes to all this stuff, when you're deciding top heavy list, look at your scenario pack, or look at like what people are running mainly for scenarios. And that definitely helps you deciding your distribution of your points. So, yeah.
Cool. I'm going to throw this, actually transition nicely into one of our listener questions. So Buckets. Bucket had asked, what are the roles of, and you hear this a lot, you hear hammer and anvil. There's 2 concepts. Very Warhammer fantasy that's still carried over to this day, and I think it's a wargaming term in general. But
I say this a lot.
Cool. So if I've just heard this talk and Buckets have just said, what's that role of a hammer and what's the role of an anvil, and what's some examples of each? So Kieran, do you want to take the first crack at this?
So hammer units are basically units designed just to kill, just to, I guess, wipe out as much stuff as humanly possible. Usually they sacrifice on defense. So a good example would be Fiends of Sinesh. Pretty damn hard hitting, not that tough. If you can get them lined up, and this is what you generally want to do for hammer, you want to set them up, get them attacking, like charging, fighting before your opponent gets to retaliate. Whereas an anvil unit's the opposite. An anvil unit generally wants to sit on an objective or sit in like a point where, like a funnel point, and basically force your opponent to go at them and not hit your hammer. So hammer and anvil units work together. You have the anvil protecting the hammer, or sometimes you have the hammer just running up ahead so the anvil can just chill. It depends on what you're running, of course.
So what's some other examples of, let's say, a hammer? So I think the first thing that comes to mind in my own army would be, let's say, a demigriff. The demigriff is a hammer. I think of the Idoneth Deepkin with their eels. I would say an eels is a hammer. What's some other examples, boys, of a hammer?
So let's look at Nurgle, right? So Nurgle, I love looking at Nurgle because Nurgle's a very good all-round army, in my opinion. But they have, let's just do this, right? Let's look at Plague Monks, right? Crappiest save ever, but God, they hit hard. 40 Plague Monks hit like a truck. That is a hammer unit. Then we look at the other side, similar amount of bodies, right? Similar amount of bodies, a little bit more expensive. But then we look at Plague Bearers, right? 30 block of them, -1 to hit, 5 up after like feel no pain save, all that stuff. That there is an anvil. Same army, big horde units in a way, but they both have different roles completely and similar, like a different point cost, but like they have a very different role and they play so differently, but they're in the same army.
Yeah.
Right.
It's probably fair to say that all armies have a type of hammer and anvil. I think of my Gloomspite, and I think of my anvil. You know, the guys that are just going to take a punch is that big block of 60 grots. But then, something that's going to go out there and do some damage might be a Mangler Squig. It could be the Boingrot Bounders. They're the guys that go in there. They're going to do, fanatics are going to do damage, and do as much damage as possible. And then the guys the anvil are going to hold up. Yeah.
And then another unit that can like be anvil in a way could be a hero that you've buffed up in a way. So let's look at the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon with the Ethereal Amulet, because let's be honest, they all come with one nowadays. They just come with it. They just come with it. That there is an anvil and also a hammer in a way, but like it has to be a hammer on the charge. So like that there, you can just get stuck. If it fluffs, you go, cool, I've held you up there for a turn or two. I'm a 3-up save ignoring, blah, blah, blah. Like that there is an anvil right there. And then like another hammer unit will probably be like, what's a hammer unit for death nowadays? Big blockers, Scaly's buffed up. They hit hard.
Kieran, yeah.
I was just gonna say Grimghast Reapers, Bladegeist Revenants, like just a lot of the Nighthaunt stuff. Morghast,
I think of Vargas.
Acropolis Stalkers.
Another term that we use for hammers is glass cannons in a way as well.
So bloodletters are known as glass cannons, something that can hit, but probably don't take punch as well as it can hit.
Yeah. Like that there is a good example is bloodletters.
Actually, this actually might lead into a nice question that Darka Duarden has reached out and said, how many points should you set aside between the hammer and the anvil in, let's say, a traditional 2K? And I think about the play style, and I think about you want to pack a punch, right? You want to go out there and punch your opponent on the tabletop, not literally. Please don't punch your opponent. But you need to be able to take a punch as well. So I think of a perfect example. There's been a whole bunch of times where my opponent has done like a turn 1 charge. They've absolutely punched me in the face, and that's all they've got. If I can take that punch, that first turn punch, and I can hit them just as hard, then often that's their only strategy. They haven't put enough points in the defensive side or the objective because they put everything into the hammer. So, boys, thoughts on point allocation between hammer and anvil? Kieran? Is there one?
It's another one that can be entirely dependent on what you're playing. Like, say, Slaanesh, they don't really have anvils in a traditional sense. Everything in that army is super fragile, but they just have these extremely powerful hammers. So, and their anvil is one of their allegiance abilities that makes other units fight last. So they're basically just mitigating their weakness as a hammer. Whereas, say for Caesar Sigmar, if you're building a list around there, because they're very balanced army, I would points allocation. Like I'm looking at like 30 Phoenix Guards, like 400 something points. I think
420. And to be honest with you, this is exactly why I've added a unit of Phoenix Guard. So in the past, before Cities of Sigmar, my free guild guard were quite strong. They were quite resilient. There's been some changes in the book recently, and they're not as resilient. And there's been a couple of times where a turn 1 charge has really knocked the wind out of my army, and that juicy center of wizards and endless spells and support units, if they collapse that battle line, if they collapse that unit, then I've got no way to punch back. My punch is not nearly as hard. But if I can absorb that punch, that Phoenix Guard can absorb. Skeletons are a great example. Your Grimghast Reapers are a great example. Your Daughters of Cain Hagnar is a great example. If you can take on that punch, then there's a good chance you can punch them back and really wrestle the game back from a loss to a victory.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So you were running Free Your Guard, like you were, they're cheaper than Phoenix Guard, let you spend more in other places in your list. But as you found out, like they're not necessarily what you need to hold up. So investing more in the Phoenix Guard has helped your list out, I would say. Would you agree?
I'll find out this weekend, but in theory, absolutely, because they can absorb. So I have a lot of damage that's coming out of my spellcasters. No surprise, being a Hallowheart army. But if I can't take that punch, if I can't take that Stormcast coming down from the sky, or Nighthaunt coming from the underworlds, or a turn 1 charge from Khorne or from Nurgle, then there's not a lot I can do, or I'm going to be pinned in my backboard. So, Liam, anything you'd add to that?
To be honest, though, to answer his question, it's the same answer as last time. It all depends on your army and your playstyle. Like, let's look at Sylvaneth, for example. You would probably spend about over 600, 800 points on an anvil, like dryads and stuff, big blocks of them. And then you would probably spend the rest in hammers or support in a way. So, like, it all really depends on it. Like, it depends on your playstyle. If you want to be super aggressive, then it might probably be like spend 800 points on hammers and then the rest on anvils. So, like, yeah, it all really depends on like what you want to do with that army. And just ask yourself this question, like write this down. If you have like a little book to write army lists and stuff, or like notes on your phone, literally just go. The first question you ask yourself is, what do I want to play? How do I want to play it? How many turns do I want to play? And that there will probably give you a good idea like what to like allocate points wise for your hammer and anvil, if that makes sense. If you want to play the long game, go hardcore on anvils and then like hammers at the backline ready to just finish stuff off. Because something really interesting about anvils is they are there to play the durable game, and sometimes they just do bits of chip damage surprisingly as they go on. Like dryads, for example, neg 1 to hit and also +1 save with a block of 10 or more. And they're surprisingly really good in combat.
That's Grots. So, Grots as well. Grots will hold you up. The nets are -1 to hit. There's 60 bodies. Taking that down is really hard.
Yep, and taking that down, but like they're doing chip damage to that opponent. Just like, yep, cool. You're hitting me, but like I'm just gonna do chip damage, and then I'm gonna get this like hammer unit to clear up that mess, and then we'll just move forward. And like that's how the hammer and anvil works. Like the anvil holds there, and then the hammer goes, cool, let's finish this off. So yeah, it really depends on your playstyle and how you want to do it. So to answer his question. So yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the chat are agreeing with you, Liam. So when it comes to building a list, and I think you both are really good at this, is to build a really good list, and I could pick a list that was written last year or the year before, and just because it was good last year and I won a tournament last year doesn't mean it necessarily will win this year. And that comes down to the meta. That comes down to the changing of the meta and what's going on in the competitive scene. So let me ask you guys, how important is the meta to your list building? And then the secondary question is, how do you understand and prepare for the meta? Because for some people, they don't know what the meta is. They don't know how to anticipate the meta. And for them to even plan that can be quite difficult. So how important is it? How do you understand it and prepare for it?
I guess the meta is basically what's doing well in tournaments at the moment. So like say at the moment it's Skaven and Slaanesh have the highest win rates I think of any army in the game currently. Like you're going to see lots of Skaven and Slaanesh lists at tournaments. So you can kind of define the meta as not just them, but like those kinds of armies that might be being built to counter them, and so on and so forth. And it's inherently like it's both player and rules driven. So you get a good battle time with Slaanesh, but you still need the good players playing it, or they're not going to get that far with it, because ultimately player skill is the main thing. And basically, when I'm thinking of building a list, I'm literally just looking at, okay, so for Cine GT, I was like, well, Slaanesh is pretty popular at the moment, so I want to build a list that counters Slaanesh. I thought I'll do an interesting kind of list that counters them through my own Slaanesh list that's basically just designed to kill other heroes, pin hordes in place. And I generally also just look at tournament results to kind of get a grip on what's going on and what's doing well, what I can expect to see.
Yeah.
I'm actually just going to bring Liam, keep talking. I just want to bring something up which might be helpful.
So for me, when it comes to understanding the meta, okay, cool. So something that I look for when it comes to meta and writing lists is seeing what pretty much similar to what you're about to bring up at the moment. So if we can, for anyone who's listening, we're currently looking at the Honest Wargamer stats at the moment. Now, this one here is really interesting because Stormcast is got a high percentage of meta, for example, but they're not got a great win rate, so it's not kind of like a threat at the moment. So when we're looking at meta, it's looking at the percentage of the armies turning up to events. And then when we're looking at the stats, from example, from the Honest Wargamer, which you can look up on the Honest Wargamer website, I'm sure Anthony will put down a link on it after this show, maybe.
Sure, let's say yes.
Let's say yes. Anyways, what we see as well is a match win percentage. Now, the match win percentage is a huge thing because that's what the chances are of this army actually doing well, right? So if we're looking at Slaanesh right now, it's 6.7% of the meta, which is quite high still, and then 67% win rate. So almost a 70% chance of winning like all their games, okay? Or like they're doing the most wins. Now, what I see in this is being like, cool. So I look at whatever has the highest win rate and then also the highest meta percentage, because that's what I'm going to see, and also what I know is going to be doing well at the top tables, right? So I would make sure my list again can just tick those boxes. So for answer, Slaanesh loves multi-wound heroes, right? So I'll make sure that I have at least some units that are one wound hero just to waste their depravity system, in a way, right? Like that's something that I would have to like look out for, because let's look at eel spam, for example. If you're going hardcore eel spam and then you're going up against Slaanesh is going to love you because your whole army is multi-wound.
Can I just pause you for a second? I think we might have gotten a little bit too far down this rabbit hole. And I just want to, really good discussion, but I just want to put this into a little bit of context. So according to the Honest Wargamer stats, and look, to be honest with you, every region, every country's meta is different. And it may not reflect. You may not have a local Slaanesh player. You may have more Stormcast players or more Khorne players in your local meta. But according to the global meta, and I just want to put the stats into context. Let's say Stormcast Eternal. So right now, their meta is about 10%, just under 10%. It's at 9.98%. So if I'm at a 100-player tournament, there is a strong likelihood, based on the average, that there is going to be 10 Stormcast players. Could be more, could be less. On average 10. So there's a really good likelihood that I'm going to play a Stormcast army. So if I'm thinking about how do I handle a Stormcast army, how do I beat them, how do I, what would I do if I was matched up against a Stormcast army? That's super relevant.
Yeah.
But what Liam's saying right now about the Idoneth Deepkin, according to the stats, currently they've got a meta representation of 3.74. So just under 4%. So if I'm at a 100-player tournament, there's only going to be 4 players or less of these Deepkin players. If I'm at a 30-person tournament, then it might only be 1 or 2. So the likelihood of having to worry about Legion of Grief, Kharadron Overlords, Bone Splitters, Fire Slayers, those numbers are low.
Yeah.
So as you're building the list, and boys, you correct me if I'm wrong, I should factor that in, but not necessarily be concerned about some of these lower representation. According to the representation, I definitely want to be concerned about Blades of Corn, Skaven, Stormcast Eternal, because they have a higher likelihood of being matched up. So if I want to win 5-0 or 4-1, I need to have at least some ideas and some plans on how I would defeat a Skaven and a Gloomspite Kits, or someone that's got a high representation.
Yeah. So pretty much you look at like what the percentage is high as, and then just work out a way to beat it. If that makes sense. Like understand the mechanics and making sure you don't give it to them. So similar to like, what's the percentage wise of Slaanesh? It's 7%.
Slaanesh is just under 70%, so 67.3. So
I mean meta wise, it's 7%.
Oh, meta wise, there's it's just under 7%.
Yeah, just under 7%. So like, it was again 100-player event. There's going to be 7 Slaanesh players, and then like 10 or so. So pretty much, you look at that, you'd be like, cool. This is probably what I'm going to go up against. And then the cool thing is, there's some really cool resources. Like you got the free app to see what they do. You know, I mean, like not their full allegiance ability, but like there's other ways to find that through their battle tomes and like other online sources. And you write a list based on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like that's the one thing that you look at when you're looking at the meta and then writing a list around it, is to be like, if I can go up against blah, blah, blah armies, and like not every army is going to be perfect to go up against everything. Like I just want to make that clear. Like there's no such thing as a perfect army when it comes to like being all-rounder. So yeah, like the stat show is really good, but like I wouldn't say it's like follow it to it. Like the stats are really good, but I wouldn't like hold it as a Bible. It's just a really helpful guide, if that makes sense.
And I also think it's worthwhile from an expectation point of view. If you're going to run Beasts of Chaos and you are going to go 5-0 at Beasts of Chaos, according to the meta, they are winning at an average of 40%. So on an average out of a 5-game tournament, it's 2 out of 5. So either you've either got to be an exceptional player who has practiced and honed and found some amazing synergies and ways to win. You either need to lower that expectation, or you need to find something else if you want to go 5-0. Maybe Beasts of Chaos isn't for you right now.
The interesting thing, something similar to like when we were just saying about like Beasts of Chaos and stuff, and armies like that.
And I'm not picking
the ways,
by the way.
No, I'm just saying like armies like that is you kind of also have an advantage, because what is their where's Beasts of Chaos at the moment? What's their meta percentage?
It's 2%.
Now, we just had something happen on Twitter where someone was talking about how they were winning games because their opponents had no idea what their army did. Right? We had that conversation on Twitter, and I said that's what we call gotcha lists. And sometimes you can play that in your advantage where like you do explain your army's rules, saying like this is what my army does. But like since you're at a lower meta percentage, not a lot of people are going to know what your army does. And that's kind of similar to like what we were talking about in our last episode about F the meta. So if you want to know more about that, like with being competitive and stuff like that, you can kind of also listen to that as well as this show to understand how to explain your army to like when your army is like underrepresented. So yeah.
That's just one of the many resources. I don't want to talk too much on this. Kieran, you're going to say something?
I was just saying, another thing to keep in mind is if you come up against an army you're unfamiliar with, your opponent will probably do their best to like explain what the units do and stuff, what battalion effects do, but you probably still, unless you've had practice against, you might still be unfamiliar with like the synergies and just how nasty they are in practice, which might lead you to underestimate what those armies are really capable of, like Beasts of Chaos, that Chris Tott's Thunderscorn list, like my god, that list is nasty, and you don't expect it because who runs it? I've only seen Chris run it, but it's scary, and I underestimate when I played it against GT, and it cost me big time.
So let me do a twofold question. One that I wanted to ask was, how do you know when you need to tweak your list, or it's just not you? You just don't use the unit optimally. And then the Unsecret Life of Us had also said, how do you know when you've written, let's say, 2 lists, and how do you know which one to take? Like, do you follow your gut feel, or how do you like, you've written a couple of good variants and like, oh, do I take this artifact or this artifact? Like, how do you make that decision of which list to take?
It's hard to say, like, because it's like with me, I kind of I play some games and I kind of analyze like, okay, did I do this wrong? Did I move this unit out of position where it got charged, it got killed before I could do anything? Okay, that's on me. That's not on the unit. Did I get it into what I thought was a good situation, like I charged into something, or my buffs were active and so on? Did it underperform to my expectations? You kind of just have to just try it out, but just really get a feel for it, I guess, because yeah, like
yeah, go on.
No, you go.
I was just saying, while you're thinking, I know a piece of advice that I always give people is don't make too many big changes at once. If you're trying to test and trying to work out and isolate a problem, just because your list didn't work very well in one particular time, or you failed to cast X amount of endless spells, it doesn't mean you got it completely and start again. Sometimes it's just a simple thing. So one of my lists, like I've just literally replaced my Free Guild Guard for Phoenix Guard. Now, obviously, I've had to find a few more points to interchange the unit, but I haven't completely gutted it to do that. And this weekend I'm gonna see how well that one change went. And if it didn't go as well, I need to either reassess. Liam.
So I'm gonna talk about like my Sylvan of Heartwood list, because it's a good example of like I wrote 3 different versions of this list, and I played so many games with those different lists, and I worked out quite quickly that I went from a list where I was so used to going into, let's talk about like drops, right? Like I was so used to doing low drop armies. So I was like, okay, cool. Lowest drop army is clearly going to do well. And then I played a few games and I realized that it wasn't doing what I wanted to do. And then so I dropped like one of the battalions and I just added more stuff that I needed, like tree revs and an extra hero or something, like an extra support to that army that I could use. And then I started seeing bigger success. Just from like instantly realizing that like, okay, cool, this battalion's not working for me. It's not doing what I want it to do. I'm just gonna like drop this and add this. Little changes, as Anthony said, like don't make too many changes, but little changes. And then I looked at the 2 lists and I was like, yeah, this is clearly the better one because it has more tools. It's got the answers that I want it to. And again, it was ticking my checklist that I mentioned earlier this show. So that is kind of like how I kind of decide, being like, what are the 2 lists, is just literally being like, is it got the list that I want? And also, is it answering the problems that I have when I'm coming up to playing? For example, Knife to the Heart, my army's really slow unless I'm teleporting, but now I can only teleport 1 unit for the woods. So I need an extra unit to like get over there as quick as I can. Treva is my answer to that, because I can go wherever I want. So
the players pack may dictate which list is better in this particular scenario. It could be the meta. If you start noticing more and more people are bringing shooting at the moment, or you've got more magic that's happening, you might want to think about, a perfect example is I noticed a few armies that I was playing against at Runax had no wizards. So for me, I got away with murder when it comes to spellcasting. But on the flip side, if you're like, crap, there's a lot of magic going on right now, maybe I need to take like an endless spell that could help me in this situation, or maybe I ignore it completely. There's some things you might go, oh, how do I handle this, or what would I do in this situation? I don't think there's a silver bullet on this.
Move on.
Kieran, you gonna say something else? No.
All
right, it sounds like you got that one covered. Cool. So we talked about list tweaking. We're very close to our listener questions, which kind of cover and very thematic around. It kind of continues this conversation. Once you've written a list, do you just take it to a tournament, or what do you guys do? So you've written a list. We've got an event coming up soon. What do you do? Liam shaking his head furiously. I want to know what Kieran does first, and then I want to find out what you guys are doing with that list.
I play test the hell out of it. Theory only holds up so well, but I mean, like, it doesn't last. Like, the theory only gets you so far. You need to put things into practice, like
I'll give you a perfect
example. Yeah,
I'll give you a perfect example. So I played Wes Graham at Brishammer a few months ago, and something that I did, we talked about, getting those back objectives that are really hard, and I think it was Knife to the Heart. So I'm playing Wes with Knife to the Heart, and I'm playing my Gloomspite Gits, and I'm like, I'm going to do Hand of Gork. I'm going to teleport a unit of Grots. I'm going to have a unit of Fanatics hiding in that unit of Grots. Now I have to be 9 inches away from my opponent, and my Grots pop out within 3. So that's a 6-inch charge. I did that 3 times, and I failed. I failed twice out of 3. Statistically, a 6-inch charge on 2d6 is something like 55 or 45. It's somewhere in that 50% bracket. It took me 3 goes to do that. So if I think about in theory, I should have got a turn 1 charge, and if I didn't do turn 1 charge, I should have got a turn 2 charge. Didn't happen. So theory doesn't always work, and the dice are not always favorable. So that's just one of many examples. Just because in theory, skeletons with spears do more damage than swords, doesn't always mean that you're going to be within 2-inch range of all of your units or all your models into an enemy. It doesn't always happen like that.
I guess I'll use one of my tournament experiences. So I was at Sydney Slaughter. I was playing Doors of Cain, and I basically went mass over finesse. I had no Kinnerai. I had a giant unit of 20 snakes, and I was like, in theory, I'll just bulldoze everything. I don't need anything super fast, because Lich Elves to Slaughter are pretty fast as they are. Then it came to game 5, and man, I felt the lack of those harpies. It was a mission where basically your whole army deploys in one corner, and 2 of the objectives are on the complete other side of the board. And it was a nightmare just trying to have it, thinking, I have to split up my army, I have to split up these big combat units that rely on being close to my heroes for buffs. Sending one basically to die, get these points, and then they don't get there in time. I didn't get enough points, cost me the game. Whereas if I had harpies, would have completely solved the problem.
Yeah. So for me, I practiced the crap out of it.
So we said practice a lot. Yep. So practice.
I'm gonna tell you that one of the best players in Australia. He used to do heaps of Theory Hammer, and he quickly learned that Theory Hammer is not a thing, and we gave him the piss out of it, being like, you need to practice and understand that it doesn't work like that. And he now practices his list. So every time he writes a list, he now practices it. And then again, he's just tweaking it as he goes, cool, need the answer. And now he's like, before the event, he goes, cool, this is my list. I know what it does. I can go. And he's just more confident. And another thing as well is when you're writing a list, don't take it straight to the event, because the chances are you're probably going to get called out for slow playing because you don't know what your list does. If you just wrote this list, you go, cool, this is all going to work in theory, turn up to a 2-day event, there's going to be so many people angry at you because you're taking your sweet time working out what you want to do. So that's just one thing as well. When you're practicing a list, you're tweaking it, but then also you're learning quite quickly what you can and can't do with that list. And that's really important to know what your limit is with that list. So yeah, that's just as I've been saying this whole show, it's just practice and understanding it. And you will get good quite quickly when you've written that list, you honed it, and then you make it the list your own in a way. And the cool thing is, as well, is you could easily just take a list that looks cool on the internet, but you have no idea what it does because it's not your list. So
speaking of speeding up the games as well, I just want to shout out AOS Reminders, who awesome free website that you can get all of your rules by phase. You build up the army, you can import it from War Scroll Builder. So if you're worried about slow play, if you're looking at how I can speed up my game and make sure I get all my rules and do really well, this is a great way to get across everything. So go check out AOS Reminders, which actually is a nice reminder for myself to say that as of tonight, I have a feedback survey that's going to be open for the next 30 days. I'm very curious for people's feedback, what's good, bad, different, what you'd like to see from this channel. So in the channel description, I have a Google form. It's completely optional. Every question is optional. And at the end of next month or mid next month, I'm actually going to give people who give me constructive feedback a prize. So I'm going to give away some subscriptions to AOS Reminders, as well as some Games Workshop vouchers in your country. So do check out the channel description. Go check out and complete the survey. I appreciate your honest feedback. And AOS Reminders is one of the many prizes that I'll be giving away. So do check that out in the episode description or in the podcast description. Listener questions. Liam, you going to say something before I move to listener questions?
Nothing. Just one other thing quickly when it comes to writing a list and then taking it out. Really cool thing to add in is writing notes down, like what you didn't do well in that game. Sometimes I take like the Age of Sigmar like battle journal and I just write down like what went wrong and like what thing, and then I'd be like, cool, look back at it and then just tweak my list from it, being like, oh, like my Dryads didn't last as long as I hoped, and was it a block of 20? Oh, okay, cool, I need to make it a 30-man unit, like stuff like that. Yeah, that makes sense. So you just go, cool, just writing that, because sometimes like after you just done like a pretty long game or whatever, it takes quite a while. So yeah,
a few things that I would call out, and Dan Brewer is definitely a beauty. From Tim King Tristan. A few other things I would say is socialize that list to your friends and your colleagues on Twitter, on Facebook, wherever your community may lay. Go, hey, this is the list that I want to run to an event. What are your thoughts? What could I do better? Is there something that I'm missing that you think I should consider? You can go to these Facebook groups. You can look at other people's lists and see how they've built it out. Ask your opponent for feedback. Say, hey, Liam, we just had a game. Anything I could do different? Anything that, should I have given that priority away, or should I have taken it? Or do you think there's something here that didn't quite work that I should think about in the future? Constant feedback, because it's not often the list. You can build a really good list, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the games. It's often those in-game decisions over the last 2 to 3 hours that will make or break your performance. So list building is just one of those many things. Your decision making happens from practice. It's about thinking about situations, whether it's winning the scenario, whether it's handling a certain enemy. But practice, build a strong list, learn it. And there's something within it too of playing the long game, which is practicing over time and sticking with something. And that's why, at least in Australia, you do see people who hold on to armies on an average on a 12-month basis. So they'll start a new army for CanCon, they'll run that up until the next CanCon, and they often start, they hold on to their armies for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. Listener questions. Let's do this. There's so many.
And Joel Graham's like, host this on Twitch. Well, maybe we'll take over Twitch. I'm only just building out on Facebook, so always curious for feedback. Well, let's do some rapid fire listener questions. Let's not dwell too much, because there's a lot of these questions, so I'd love rapid fire answers on this. So Chris Hallett says, how do you balance following meta lists, so what everyone's taking is good, and then finding that next big thing? So, do you go full experimental when you try to find these meta breaking lists? Or are you slowly tweaking, or do you just make this big shift to an army that people aren't expecting? So how do you find that balance between playing the meta and getting ahead of the meta?
I would say the way I approach it is I do shamelessly look at what's good, and I'll kind of take the gem of that idea, I guess, and kind of build around. So 60 Grimghast is really good. I'll put my own spin on it, which is Coven for an Arc in the Black, and just synergies and stuff with them that you wouldn't normally see with the Grimghast list. That's kind of how I approach it. So my own spin on a meta list, basically.
Yep. So you're not too worried about getting ahead of the meta, but you're looking at making a meta army or list your own.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. That's silence.
No, it's just for me, for example, when I was running, let's say Daughters of Cain, I kind of did something similar where I just tweaked it in my own way. Not a lot of people were looking at snakes for a while. It was just witches spam and stuff, even though it was clearly the best option. But you just go, yeah, that's cool, but I'm also going to add in this kind of thing. You just make it your own. And then I kid you not, 3 or 4 months later, people started taking Blood Sisters out of nowhere. There was this on, everyone's let's do 20 Blood Sisters. I'm okay, cool, this is a thing now. And then one thing about Kieran's thing as well is I haven't seen the Coven Throne at all till then he played it. And I kid you not, I went to CanCon and I saw so many goddamn Coven Thrones. So there was clearly something that was there. But yeah, it's just kind of like you just find things. You just go like you just experiment, as similar to like what Kieran said. Just kind of like cover though no one really was looking at, but experimenting it works like a charm.
So I've probably got a really good example. So at the height of Legions of Nagash, I was running Legion of Night, which is the Manfred-based, I guess, allegiance within Legion of Nagash. While everyone was playing with Neferata and Arcan and Nagash, I was playing with Manfred. And I know Liam is a big fan of Manfred. I'm going to mute you right now. But I was playing something that was the meta, which was running skeletons with double pile-ins and all that good stuff, but at the same time doing my own spin, but also playing the movement game, which potentially Legions didn't have at the time. So I think there's a way to get ahead. Do you go try to get completely ahead? Probably, maybe not, but certainly you want to think about, well, right now, if you've got Slanesh as a problem, you've got a lot of things that are double piling in Terrorgeist. You want to start building in shooting. Or if you're noticing there's a lot of magic happening, or Go Trek is ruining your fun, you need to find ways to get ahead of that, because as more and more people take on Go Trek, maybe, that's one many random examples, but getting ahead is a good thing, but also not getting too ahead.
Good thing that you said is don't go too ahead, because if you go way too ahead, right, it's probably not good. Like, you're probably not going to compete well in the meta if you're going way too ahead off the meta, if that makes sense. And then you probably don't want to touch those units or whatever that you're experimenting till then they actually become useful, because you had that experience of being like, they weren't good back then, so why would I use them now? Yeah. So you don't want to go 2 steps ahead, but always thinking of a way for an answer. It's kind of like the meta's like asking a question and like you figure out an answer to it.
Yeah. What's strong? How do I handle it? What would I do in this position when it comes to Hagnar, eels? Can I handle a deep striking eel? And then what do I do in that position? John Hammond asked, what about the balance of a good list taking models you like instead of what's good on paper? Do you guys do that? Do you guys find a model that you absolutely love, or it's just Manfred is right now? I've just said that Manfred is probably at the time the most expensive Mortarch and probably the least value of the 3. I think Arcan and Neferata do some amazing things. I loved Manfred
because they're the better Mortarchs, but yeah.
No, you look at the rules and there is something within Manfred, but you can build around it. But your expectations need to be clear. Kieran,
go.
I will generally Sylvaneth, Alariel. I'm almost always going to take Alariel to a tournament. I don't care what her rule is going to be like. I love that model. I will always take it. I do tend to try and take what's good. Like, say, Grimghasts are not my favorite Nighthawk model. I much prefer Bladegeist Revenants, but for a Legions list, obviously, Bladegeist weren't in Legions at the time, but I was just like, well, Grimghasts are better. I only like them a little bit less than Bladegeist visually. I'll stick with them. But then I have Centerpiece models that I like. So I love the Arcan model. I love the Common Throne. Those are kind of what give me something to kind of latch onto and be like, yeah, I'm running what I like. I'm making some sacrifice, but I'm generally running what I'm like.
Yep. Liam, I know you've been a Durthu fan since day one, and you've run Durthu whether he's strong or not.
He's always strong. I have no idea what you're on about. So for example, actually, a really good example is I go by this rule of cool. I've been saying this since ever I started doing this hobby again about 3 or so years ago. I just go by rule of cool. And as one of the questions is, sometimes my rule of cool means something really good on paper. But I go by rule of cool, so I make sure that every time when I'm running a list, there are models there that I like. Straight up. I straight up like the models. For example, my Doors of Cain, I actually really like the model range. Thought it was really cool. And I love the cauldrons and stuff, and I loved Marathi. So I made sure that they were in my army. Durthu, I love him. He's in my army. Straight up. Tree Revs, I always love that kit. Have it in my army. And then with Flesh Eater Courts, I love the Terrorgeist model. I think it's the most awesome undead model, in my opinion. It's an awesome Centerpiece model, the way it's posed and everything. That's why I have 3 of them. I just always make sure that whatever I really like, it's in there, and I have either multiple of them or as much that I go, cool, this is the army that I want to deploy. Let's do this. And then, that's how I do it. I just Yeah, like when it comes by paper and stuff, like for example, what was one army that
I said fast dancers, by the way.
Yeah, but like I'm just thinking like there's a couple of times where I have never gone off by paper. So I go by rule of cool.
Yeah, I think rule of cool is great. I think from a competitive point of view, you may not want to run rule of cool, depending on what is cool. But there's always a way of working around it. So something to think about.
Tim's question's good.
What's that?
Tim's one.
Yeah. Well, I've got the questions. So Tim Barclay has asked and said very, very clear. The Aussie Wargamer has said, I don't care about winning and prefer to build a list based on the models that I like to convert and paint. Having said that, I would love to be able to give my opponent a decent game. Any advice on building a hobbyist list that may not win, but can provide a decent game on the opponent? And this really comes back to our definition of competitive. Competitive doesn't need to mean 5-0. Competitive doesn't mean crush your opponent in turn one. Competitive could just be a 50-50 chance of winning or having a good game over the duration of the 2 to 3 hours. So any advice you'd give to Tim, who wants to have a very hobbyist view on competitive list building, but it's less about the win, it's more about having a great game?
I guess try and, like, working within what you want to take, just try and, as Liam said earlier, like tick those boxes to try and win the different missions. And like, do you have the bodies to contest objectives? Do you have mobility to get the far away objectives? Do you have your hammers and anvils? And especially focus on, like, say, if you want to run Darkling Coven theme Seas of Sigmar, focus on the synergies they have, which usually revolves around their sorceresses, and kind of go from there. And yeah, look at what's available to you. So, like say you compare Blackguard, Phoenix Guard. Okay, everyone will tell you Phoenix Guard are better, but Blackguard is still a good unit. You can still make them work. You just focus on, okay, how do I use them differently? Okay, I might not have them sitting there expecting, okay, a Keeper of Secrets can charge it and they'll be fine. Phoenix Guard would be fine. Blackguard, maybe not. So maybe, screen them, whereas Phoenix Guard, you would, like, you play with them differently. Look at how you're approaching your game plan differently and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah. What you said.
Yeah. Cool. So while we're talking, Liam, Clint from the Heralds of War has said, Liam, why do you always pick the models in armies that turn out to be busted? Really quickly, why are you a cheesemonger?
I don't do it on purpose, but I'm owning it now. Like,
he has good taste. What's wrong with that?
All right,
yeah, so that's my answer.
The villain to the cheese merchant. So forget photography. Liam is making cheese, and what's the latest cheese, Liam? What should we expect from the Bone Reapers? Hot take.
More tech guard spam is a thing with a harvester surrounded them. That's
cool.
That's literally going to give you a negative play experience straight up.
All right, we'll talk about that more in 2 weeks when we do faction focus on the Bone Reapers. Soren has asked a whole bunch of questions. The first one, he said, when building a list, what are the jobs that you want your unit to be able to perform, and how do you strike the balance between them? So it's kind of on the hammer and anvil, but it's also about securing objectives and positioning a power projection and things like that. Is this a little bit different to hammer and anvil, or do you think it's very much the hammer and anvil story? Because securing objectives doesn't necessarily have to be an anvil ability.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, Slaaneash's way of capturing objectives is often you left that objective empty because you think, I can't get to it. Well, okay, I'm going to chain summon a bunch of heroes and summon demonettes onto it, and what are you going to do about it? Yeah, if you didn't block it properly. Like, there's different approaches with the different armies. Like, I just lost my train of thought. You take it away, Liam.
My answer to this question is, it's honestly not really like your list, it's more your playstyle. One thing that I always do, so let's just go by like the basic, I'm trying to make this quick as well, is most objectives are held with more models within 6, right? So you pretty much zone your opponent out, but even if they charge you, you're still holding the objective and they're out of 6. That is objective securing, and then you got your anvil unit there, making it a bitch that even if they kill that anvil unit, they're still not getting that objective and they just wasted 2 or 3 turns killing that anvil. Like, that is called objective securing, and that is called practicing your game so much that you know how to secure that objective with an anvil unit and denying your opponent from that, even though they kill that anvil unit. That is called objective security.
It's a decision making.
The importance of screens as well.
Yeah, like let's say this word one more time. Practice your games.
Kieran, really quickly, what is screening for the purpose of people who may not know what that term is?
So screening generally refers to, like, let's say I've got a unit of handgunners for Caesar Sigmar. They don't want to get into combat. You know, they're really fragile. They'll die super quickly. I think they lose a lot of their combat buffs if units sort of enfranchise them as well. A lot of their shooting buffs, I should say. So what you want to stop your opponent from getting anywhere near them. So ideally, you have a unit in front of them or like around them, depending on if you're playing against Stormcast Nighthawk who can teleport. Usually, you want that unit to be cheap because they can absorb your opponent's hammer blow. They're not intended to survive. They're just intended to die by your unit's a turn or more by just dying for the cause, essentially.
Yep.
But also blocking movement is a big one.
Yeah. So Dan Brewer, for example, is notorious for the 2.9 tag, which is, you know, being able to tie up opponents with models that maybe they didn't want to. Go on, Liam. What are you gonna say?
It's the most painful experience ever to play against. It's ruins your day. But
it's tagging. It's making sure that your opponents don't get the opportunity to do what they want to do, which is maybe some units get charge benefits, or they can have they move around the board where you don't want them to move, so you pin them in. And I for example, in Legions of Nagash, I would use the Dire Wolves as a great way to do that. It's a 60-point expendable unit. It can be regenerated from a grave site. It's got a high movement. It's very, very cheap, very fast, and it can get in secure objectives really quickly. It could tag opponents, and they're not there to win the game, but they're definitely there to cause havoc on the board. Pistoliers in Cities of Sigmar is another good example that have played the role of Hemigriff.
Yeah, just any unit, but like, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just to make your like opponent's time hard, really, is generally it, which is good. And units like that are really good, like direwolves and stuff, because they're so hard to shift, especially in like a block of 15 or so. But
Jonathan Ensor's asked, when you open up War Scroll Builder or you pull out the OG paper and pen, what's the first thing you do when you make a competitive list?
Set it to 2,000 points. That's what I do.
Yeah.
The amount of times I actually write it down to 1,000 something, I'm like, yep, delete. Like,
I start with my battle line. I'll say I'll put in my 3 battle line to start securing the points at a minimum.
My thing is I think to myself, what do I want this army to do and what do I want it to be based around? So let's just say that some of these books now, you have to, every time you take a certain thing, you have to take an artifact, for example, right? So you go, cool, I'm going to add in that hero that's going to get that trait and artifact. Then I'll add in my battle line. Like, you fulfill the requirements, if that makes sense. Like, I kind of go like this. Like, let's say you want to run a particular battalion. You put that battalion in, then you fulfill the requirements, and then you go ham for everything else. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Kieran, what's yours?
Much the same as Liam's. I guess I tend to sort out what heroes I want to run first, because they tend to define how the rest of your army is going to work, because they're the ones doing the synergies and stuff.
Yeah.
And then battle line.
It's interesting to say that, because I do the other way around. I look at my battle line and then look at what will synergize my battle line, and then if I'm not happy with those synergies, I'll then swap out that battle line choice to find something that's more optimistic for me.
See, I just pick like my general, my artifacts, and my heroes kind of thing, because I know that's how it's going to work. Like, I kind of go.
But if you were starting a brand new army, or if you're someone who doesn't know their army as well as you, let's say you're picking up Cities of Sigmar, right? You don't do what you just said.
Yeah, I do. I add in as many like dreadlords and sorcerers as I did.
You picked your hero with an artifact at the very start. You did not do that.
Yeah, I did. I wanted a dreadlord, and so I can have the ethereal amulet on it, and then I just went 5/4 hydras.
All right.
Kieran likes that list. 5/4 hydras. It's a thing. I'm gonna make it a thing.
You're 2 steps ahead of me. Matt Davis asks, how do you read synergies in a book?
You read. Kieran,
so-
did you hear what he
You
said?
cut out a bit.
I'm going to mute.
No, I didn't.
I'm muting Liam. So Kieran, how do you read the synergies in a book?
So usually your synergies come from your heroes. So Free Guild, big example. Oh, poor Liam got muted. The Free Guild General. Okay. Anyway, so like, all your range units tend to get buffed by the Free Guild General on foot. Like his command ability buffs specifically units that are sitting still. So that rewards your range units, or like your linesmen that want to sit still. Your holding anvil units. Whereas, say, the Free Guild General on the Griffin, his buffs are oriented, like, I think it's like reroll charge odds plus on the hit. They're more suited towards your cavalry, like your Demogryph Knights, your Empire Knights. So, first things first, I look at the heroes, I look at what their command abilities affect, and I go from there. Like, sometimes the synergies are very generic, like, I keep using the example Sinesh because they're just what I'm playing at the moment. Keeper of Secrets, he lets you, or she lets you double piling, which that's your synergy essentially. You're effectively doubling the output of your unit, and that's a linchpin that kind of works universally across the whole army. Whereas, yeah, for Cities of Sigmar, they're more specific.
Yeah, I mean, perfect example for Cities of Sigmar. If I look at my army, right, I've got the Hurricane, which adds +1 to hit for cities units. My Free Guild General adds +1 to hit, +1 to wound with its command ability, hold the line. So all of a sudden, my handgunners go from hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, to hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. If I apply another command point, re-rolling 1s. If I got neg to hit, I can find other ways to increase that rule. If they don't move, they get +1 to hit. So all of a sudden, I can find ways to make that stat go from a 4 and 3 down to a 3 or a 2 or even a 1. Should I come up against something that causes a neg 1 to hit or wound? So you can find these little synergies. Same thing. I could take a sorceress, or I could take a Free Guild or a Collegiate Arcane Battle Mage, which gets +1 from the Hurricane. So I can choose and work out, well, the Sorcerer does this but doesn't get this benefit, but the Battle Mage gets this and can take advantage. So what's the trade-off and what gets me more bang for buck? Liam, you're unmuted. Anything you'd want to add to that?
I don't look at heroes first. I look at my allegiance ability for my synergy. So, like, if I'm looking at any army, I read its allegiance ability to see what it actually does. For example, Sylvaneth, cool. It's all about teleporting and all this stuff. With Flesh Eater Core, it's cool. It's all based about being near the heroes and Feast Day. So I need to know that my heroes can be survivable to get that ability down pat. Same with Doors of Cain. I'm like, cool. So it's a 6-up Fanatical Faith thing, but then there's ways to buff it up. And like also my prayers, I read the spell lore. I read all that first before I even get to the War Scrolls. Straight up. I read all that. And then I go, cool, now let's dive into some War Scrolls and see what I can do with this as well. And then that there, like when you're setting up your army, your brand new army, you get your pretty new shiny book, you unwrap it. First thing you read is your allegiance ability to understand how that army actually works as a basis point. Like that's literally your foundation for your house. And then your heroes are like your walls, and then everything else is to build it up into a roof, into a nice living home, and they're going to massacre your opponent's army. Like that is what I do. So yeah.
Cool.
Namaste.
And look, to be honest with you, some armies are, I'm obviously speaking on behalf of cities where that is not that easy. And some armies are a lot simpler with their allegiance abilities. I think of Deepkin, I think about the Tide and how easy it is to build around the Tide, as opposed to some more complex armies. I look at the not the more tribes, the war clans, Orc war clans. Do I go Big Warg? Do I go Iron Jaws? Well, the two allegiances are very different. And I need to think of a theme or a way I want to use or build an army.
Well,
so
see, I think that's cool that it's harder for that. Like it's so much more rewarding when you work it out.
But some of the choices aren't as simple as you're dictating. So sometimes, yes, absolutely, allegiance steers the buffs. But sometimes you've got to have a rough idea to build around it to exploit or take advantage of what you have. And cities are a perfect example. For cities, you can't start with anything because you've got some very, very basic stuff, but it all comes in sub-allegiance.
See, I find that, like, when I look at the cities book, the first thing I read was the different cities, because that's differently the allegiance abilities, like what you can run.
No, the allegiance ability is the first stuff, which is the city is the sub allegiance. Like it's the Nile route versus the
Okay, cool.
the Winterleaf kind of stuff. So it's that. Long story short, I think we all agree. It's just some are easier than others.
Some are easier than others. Yeah, like you say Deacon's actually the easiest one to understand the synergy, but when I first picked out that book, I was like, what the hell is half this crap saying? So yeah, like I thought it was like it's all different language to me. But yeah.
Warsoren has asked, in a competitive list, how important is it to outdrop your opponent, even if it means taking things that you wouldn't want to take?
It's
Kieran?
There you go.
No, Kieran, you're the guest.
Kieran, you go.
Oh, okay. It largely depends on the army. I'd say like some armies absolutely want to know if they're going first or going second. Like they want to dictate the early flow of the game. Slaanesh is a great example. Slaanesh does not want to be outdropped. If you get double turned to Slaanesh, you possibly don't get a chance to summon. That can be game over turn 2 because how quickly your army dies. Just other things. Whereas say like Ossiarchs, I don't think Ossiarchs care too much if they don't have turn order. It depends because they're just so tough. An army that's really tough don't care as much. Army that's fragile as hell, they care a lot, I'd say. Or an army that has like they need to get moving early, for example.
Yeah. Liam?
Similar to what he said about like depends on the army. Like remember the good old days when Sylvanov had to go first, so it did matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then now it doesn't actually matter. And also, to me, like it doesn't really matter because it all really depends on how do you deploy. If that makes sense. Like, you could get outdropped, right? And then like your opponent's gonna decide. And if you deploy in a smart way, you could be like, cool, you're gonna regret giving me first turn. Like straight up. Like I've deployed in ways with my new Sylvanov list where people are like, I need to go first to protect my stuff because or else like you're gonna shoot me off. And I'm like, yep, that is probably the fairest response you could probably say. So like honestly, it's really depends on like your army, the way you deploy and the way you play. But honestly, in the current era with Age of Sigmar, I don't really actually think battalions and dropping actually matters because over time you're going to get the hang of deploying against so many different armies when you're at that competitive level. So yeah, like I don't think it's important. That's my answer.
I'm going to say in some situations it is important. So for example, in my Cities of Sigmar Hallowheart list, which is a very spellcast orientated, I have a lot of spellcasters, but a lot of spells that require 18 inches or less to cast spells. So if I got given first turn, I've lost essentially one of my 5 magic phases, so I'm not getting to use as many spells. Or that could be an army that's heavily shooting. If your range is only 24 inches, there's a good chance you're going to waste one of your 5 shooting phases. So in some situations, and if you've got a strategy that relies on something like I've just mentioned, yeah, you want to go first or you want to choose who goes first. But I think, Liam, you're right. You know, critical, perfect example, Gary Percival has said it's critical for KO. You know, their damage is being done in shooting. So if you have to waste one of your 5 shooting attacks and then you get double turned, that could be game over very quickly. But Liam as well, I think you're right. Not as many strategies are reliant on dictating first, at least as they used to.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Mark Wolf has said, when building a list, do you tailor to beat the top armies or more of a like utility knife that kind of can beat everyone?
I guess depends. Sometimes I'll go for either. I design my Slaanesh list to counter other Slaanesh lists, whereas my my Ossiarch list I'm building up at the moment is designed more for just general play, where I'm trying to make it so if I come up, whatever I come up with, I should have a decent chance. You know.
Yeah. How many, when we're talking about wounds and bodies, is there an optimum amount of wounds or bodies that we want to have in a list? You know, is 100 wounds okay? You know, I think of, for example, the ogres. You know, I think of the Moor tribes, and they have a lot of wounds, but not many models in a unit. When you think about the amount of wounds and the amount of models you have on the table, is there a number or a guiding principle that you like to work off?
Is it okay if I take this one because I got a pretty good answer?
Yeah,
Like Kieran's thinking so much. Kieran's thinking so much.
Go for it.
I need to go back when this answer is depends on the scenario chosen. Let's just say we play Scorched Earth and you need bodies to screen, right? Like that's one thing in case. But I know for a fact that like Monster Mash this year has definitely been a thing where people actually don't even care about model count. Like I ran 6 models for 4 months, and I did all right.
We're talking about your Flesh Eater course here.
Yeah. I ran 6 models or whatever, and I did well. And like everyone laughed.
Did you summon though?
I did summon, but like it's still not enough from what you could like it compared to. Let's just say this. Let's say I went up against 80 Witch Elves, right? And I rocked over 6 models. Even with my summoning, I still am not up to their number against that Doors of King player. I am still vastly outnumbered. But like, I don't really think it's actually all that matters about like your wound or whatever, because if you got those 6 models, they're probably powerhouses. They're probably all hammers. For example, Flesh Eater course, it was all hammers and stuff. And I had to like play like really well. But like it's very much depends on how you play and also what the scenarios are decided. Like I knew very quite quickly that there's some scenarios that I could not go up against. And that's when I need more bodies. And that's when I went to the Holomorn list.
And that's been a struggle of, let's say, the Beast Claw Raiders or even the Gut Busters until recent with some changes.
Until recently. But that makes them more competitive now.
Yes, because now they've got rules that allow them to count the amount of bodies, and they count more than just one model.
Now, Kieran, what would your answer be? Because I know that you've run different army lists with different model counts, very different model count. You went from 60 Grimghast Reapers to now like only starting with, let's say, 30.
Yeah, it was 27 at 2.5K for Sydney GT. It was, I guess it just depends. Like, can my army do what I need it to do with the models I have? So that list had 3 Keepers of Secrets in it. Like, they're making up for me not having the bodies. And the Hellstriders, those little skirmish cavalry, I used their 6-inch pile-in dragons to basically tie down horde units that can't retreat and charge, and like just kind of dictate board control. Like that's the idea behind the list essentially. Whereas like say with 60 plus Witch Elves, it's completely different. You're just trying to flood the board, get on the objectives, make your opponent come to you.
Yeah.
I think another consideration is how accurate and true are those wounds. So I'll give you an example. The Phoenix Guard. Phoenix Guard is a block of 30, and they have a 4+ save and then additional 4+ save. So while it is technically a 30 wound unit, 30 models, there's a strong likelihood that I'm going to negate a whole bunch of those saves, and then with Emerald Lifeform, I can bring them back. So that 30 isn't really 30. It's probably more like 45 or 50 wounds. When I think about the armor save, I think about the ability to knock off wounds or bring models back, Grimghast Reapers or anything from death. Again, it might be a block of skeletons, but with regeneration abilities, that block of 30 over the duration of the game could be more like 60 between the 6 up, additional save, the bringing back from heroes and grave sites. So, and I think, Liam, to your point as well, it's the way you use those bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's just like Beast Claw Raiders now is definitely going to be the Monster Mash top tier army, in my opinion. Like they got the answers now, which is cool. Good to see them back. But
Gary Percival's asked, why are we not seeing more KO? And why do we not see more players playing with Deepkin? And he believes that they are an overall strong faction, so they're well-rounded. Why don't we see more KO, and why don't we see more Deepkin?
I guess it can just be just how the meta works. Like, like KO are reliant on I shoot you to death. I don't want you to get close to me. But you've got these armies that can kind of withstand their shooting, whether it's through summoning or just being so tough, and then the KO player can't get them off the objectives, can't win the game that way, like the traditional way. And then
is it more than just the competitiveness? Is it a cost? Is it the style of the army? Is it a Sigmar? Is it
they are a niche range. How often, like, if we, like, steampunk is a very different style of taste for some people, right? Like, I know for a fact, let's not talk, like steampunk is a very different fashion style kind of thing. Like, I know there's a very niche, small market for, like,
I have no interest in
stuff.
KO. I hate the aesthetics. I could not see myself play because for me it's not fantasy enough, and my perception of fantasy is high fantasy. So I agree with you there, Lee.
It's not going to fit everyone's taste. Also, I don't really think it helped that there was a massive misprint in a few War Scrolls in the release, and that, I think, left a foul taste for a lot of people, being like, what's the point of buying this book if there's so much mistakes in it? That's my opinion on it. It's just the fact that, like, it's just, they're not for everyone. Like, KO is just not for everyone.
I'd probably say
like,
that
Fire Slayers are a good example.
I think all three of them as well are armies that aren't cheap to enter as well. They start collecting boxes came far too late, or they didn't have what you needed.
Fire Slayers is literally, it's either you're going to buy a house in Sydney or you're buying a Fire Slayers army. You got to pick one. Like, it's one or the other.
The unsecret life of us is the lack of diversity is stopping people from taking 100%. Like, I have no interest in the naked baby dwarves. Something a little bit different would attract me. Not to say that Fire Slayers players, it's your hobby, do what you want to do. But for me personally, that lack of model diversity and range is what's stopping me from getting into any of those armies. Oh, except for Deepkin. Deepkin's a little bit different.
Now, to answer his Deepkin question of why we don't see them a lot, is actually they aren't all, like, they might be all round, but, like, they aren't answering a lot of the questions that we're currently having with today, if that makes sense. Like, currently our question is, how do we deal with Sinesh? And they're a massive, as I said before, they're a massive depravity pool for them. Like, all Sinesh players would froth over going up against Deepkin because all it is multi-wound. So, yeah. But, like, great thing is, though, like, I would be, like, with my Sylvaneth army, I'll be so scared to go up against a Deepkin player because they shut down my shooting completely. So, yeah, so, like, they have answers to things. Like, they're one of those armies where they have answers to some, they don't have answers to everything, and that's why I disagree with him saying they're not an all-round faction, in my opinion. That's just me. So, yeah.
Buckets has asked, when it comes to triumphs, and let's say, for example, we're playing a 2,000-point event, we've got 1970 built out so far, I've got 30 points left. Do I, A, leave it at 1970 and go for the triumph? Do I, B, add an endless spell? What comes into your mind? Is it worth going for the triumph, and why?
Depends on what you're running, I guess. Like, some armies don't have spell casts, so, like, you just go like, yeah, I'll take the triumph because I can't take endless spells anyway. Other armies where it's more of a choice. It depends. Can that 30 points get you an endless spell that's going to help your list, or is it just a points filler? And then you go, okay, way up. Would a potential triumph, like giving a unit reroll or wound rolls, a free battle shock immunity, a potential, I think, extra command point, like, you just weigh up.
Let's assume it's under. Let's assume that it's under a command point, so it's 40 points or less. Yeah.
I guess, you just weigh up, is the endless spell going to help you more than randomly rolling on the triumph table? That's probably the best way to look at it, because
if you get it, there's a likelihood that you may not get it. Your opponent may have 1960. So,
yeah.
Liam, triumphs?
Go, Kieran.
I usually go for the endless spell, but that's just me.
Quicksilver Swords, Palisades, you've got Shackles have gone up to 40 now, but you've got 40 points left. Shackles, you've got the little Maelstrom. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's 40 points or less.
Liam, triumphs are terrible.
Why?
Because it's no longer a D3, it's a goddamn D6.
That's your only...
Well, the fact that some of the triumphs are completely useless, like, for example, the rerolling charge ones you have to declare before you charge. You can't declare it after you try for a charge. And then same with, like, there's, like, there's a couple of uses. Like they're just useless. The D3 was so much better, where it's either hit, wounds, or saves. So much stronger, so much better, game changing in my opinion. And that's the whole point of a triumph, is to balance it out in a way where like you're underpointed, so you need that extra boost. Like even though like the extra command point's nice, but sometimes you just like at the moment in the game, like I have so much excess of command points where I'm just like, why do I need that one extra? Like, why do I need that one extra?
You'd rather go for an endless spell if it's an option.
Yeah, if I can add an endless spell. If not, I just go whatever. If I get the triumph, I just don't even bother rolling for it half the time because like they're just. I miss the D3. The D3 was so much stronger, so much better.
All right, hashtag bring back the D3 for Liam.
Bring back the D3.
Kenny the plumber, we love Ken up in Ballina. He said, how much do you consider the acquisition cost of an army when writing a list? Really good point, because if you change your list too often, you're buying more models you're not going to use. So how important is acquisition cost coming into play when you're writing a list?
It doesn't come into play too much for me. I don't start armies that often. I might start like 2 armies a year and that's it, and I'll just stick to them. And I just pick what I like, go from there.
Yep.
My thing is, when it comes to it, is you got to make sure when you're buying armies, you're going to collect it for a long time. Like that's the thing. Like if you're one of those people that's chopping and changing armies every 3 or 4 months, yeah, sure. Make sure the costs are in like the way, in effect, kind of thing. Like for example, I knew I really wanted the Bone Daddies. Straight up, I wanted them so badly. And I looked at my model collection. I'm like, I actually don't want half these armies that I used to collect anymore, so I'm going to sell them. And just so I can like get that, if that makes sense. But like the cost didn't matter to me. It's just like I wanted to clear up space kind of thing. But cost doesn't matter to me. As in like, it's just because I know if I'm going to get this army, I want to make sure I collect it because I really like the models.
Yep, and on the flip side, I went out and acquired the Lord Arcanum on foot, which is a very rare model to find. I was very fortunate to buy it at a very low price from Roberta Reimers, a good friend, the Mother of Dragons. And he gave to me at a really good price, but I've literally dropped him straight after the tournament. Now, one thing I could have done differently, now I bought him for the tournament specifically, but if I was thinking about for more a long-term play, I might have wanted to practice with different models on the table. Maybe I have an empty base that I use. Now, very similar to Liam, I don't worry about costs, so I can buy a model. I'm sure I'll use it at a later stage. But if you're price sensitive, practice, proxy, find ways to see if this model or models are going to do what you expect before you invest in, not just the investment, it's the building, it's the painting, and then you realize it's not really what you wanted.
Yeah, like you got to make sure that like you like the models that you're going to be able to stare at them for a very, very long time. So, yeah.
What happened to the beard? It's a Movember. I'm raising money for men's health. So if you want to donate to the moustache, and that's why the beard is gone. Autumn Gaming. It's like autumn, but not autumn gaming. Autumn Gaming. That's why the moustache is gone. So I'm sorry the beard is gone. Wow, we're chipping through questions. We've got a couple more here. When you're looking at a competitive army, this is coming from Rob Lewis. What are some of the core elements that you have in the criteria when you're picking one over the other? Is it just synergies? Is it just allegiance? Is it?
Wait, so what's this question? Wait, what?
So my question is very basic and potentially, basically, when you look at a competitive army, what are the core elements that it has to have? And then what's the criteria that you use to pick one model over another?
Okay. I think I got an answer for this, but Kieran, you go first because you...
Oh, okay. I guess I just look at, say, the picking one unit over another. I look at, okay, are these units, what role are they filling? If it's 2 units that fill the same role, a lot of the times they'll have, like the different synergies available to them. I'll look at the synergies, look at how the allegiances affect them. And I go like, okay, what would suit my style of list better?
Yeah. For me, it's just kind of like you just look at, for the core elements and stuff, I just kind of look at like the allegiance because that's as I said, the foundation for the whole army. Like, how is that allegiance going to work? And then when I pick the units, I make sure that they're getting the full effect of that allegiance ability. So let's have a look at, for example, Sylvaneth. Their allegiance is the Wildwood, so I make sure that most of my units are getting full effect of that. So, for example, let's look at a Branch Witch and a Branch Wraith. 80 points, Wizard, access to the same spell law, access to the same artifacts, pretty much the same, different spells, different rolls. One gets a -1 to hit being near Wildwood, the other one doesn't, right? So I'm going to pick the one that gets a buff out of that Wildwood, which is free to my allegiance ability. That's how I pick for my competitive list in a way. Does that make sense? Like, I'm making sure that I'm picking stuff that get the full effect of my allegiance ability. If that helps to understand like why I kind of do it, if that makes sense. But yeah.
That's a good example, especially because the Branch Wraith can summon Dryads, and that's amazing. Branch Witch doesn't get anything like as good as that ultimately. But then also, yeah.
It's just one of those things where like you just pick it, you go, cool, they're fulfilling kind of like a similar role, but the other one's doing clearly a better job and it's using the full effect of the allegiance ability. While the Branch Witch, you can kind of like build it outside of a Sylvaneth army in a way, like that Branch Witch bomb, be like, cool, it can do something around this. Like, yeah, that's kind of like the best way to just answer your question, man. So yeah, like I just kind of like use the allegiance ability as a foundation to build up my elements. So yeah.
I would agree with that. A couple of other quick questions. Jared Wilson has said, what is the theory of having something in every phase versus like a shoot cast, which is I guess all in one phase? Do you have a thought around? So my Gloomspite Gits, for example, is a very heavy magic phase, and when things don't go your way, then you're going to have a bad time. On the flip side, sometimes your tricks really work, sometimes they don't. So you're rolling the dice. What are your thoughts on going all or nothing, or having a bit of everything?
It's another one that's completely army dependent. Some armies just naturally do everything in the fight phase, or they have movement shenanigans, or like Zench, they're all about casting spells like Gloomspite and basically penning you in with lots of endless spells and just these endlessly respawning waves of horrors that you just can't get through to get to those key heroes. Like, that's an army that focuses in on basically one phase.
On the flip side, you've got people like Legions of Nagash that don't even have really a choice to get into the shooting phase. They've got some very short range shooting, but it's not even a thing. Yeah.
Or like the contrast with this, like Caesar Sigmar. Caesar Sigmar can do literally everything. You can do magic well with Hallowheart. You can do shooting well with all the various elf, dwarf, human options, the artillery. You can do combat well, executioners, great swords, Phoenix Guard. You got lots of high movement units. It depends on what you're running, basically, like what army you're playing, like what's available to you.
Kind of goes back to the meta question as well as what am I expected to face. If I don't want to engage in combat, I've got some really cool shooting, maybe from long range, but then that might sacrifice my point allocation into casting because you can't have everything in your army. It's just impossible. You know, you can have a really big character like Nagash, but that means that you're sacrificing in other areas. So think about that game plan that Liam keeps talking about, and obviously practice.
Yep.
We kind of acknowledged this one before, but how much the tournament packs affect a list. But the part that I wanted to get out of Warsoren's question is how do you mitigate the effects of a tournament pack that may be at a disadvantage to you? Let's say it's very hero heavy. Maybe it's playing in a realm that doesn't work in your favor. Like how do you mitigate a tournament pack that isn't good for you? So the first one obviously is change your army. That's just like if you want to do well and it's just not favorable to you, don't run that army. That's just the obvious one.
Well, let's just think of this situation, right? Let's just say there's like an event happening in 3 months, right? And you just finished an army for CanCon. Let's just put this like in a setting, right? Like there's like a pack out and he has 3 months after CanCon to decide a list for this. Let's just put that in a setting. Yeah. I reckon, in my opinion, it's either you tweak your list, don't change it completely, but tweak it to answer those questions that scenario pack is asking you, and then spend those 3 months to practice and tweak it. Okay, like you just finished painting like your whole army for CanCon or whatever big tournament, and then the next one that has a different pack, you go, cool. I'm going to change this up. I'm going to add in even more heroes or add this artifact to this hero and stuff to answer to this question. And just practice with that. Like your gameplay might have to change a bit, but then comes into practice, and most scenario packs, they're generally out quite early to give you an answer to that, which is good. Like we got given our scenario pack for CanCon 3 weeks ago or something, just so we can work out what we're going to build our armies and stuff around. So yeah.
But in fairness to some of the listeners here, their tournaments don't announce the rounds and the scenarios until on the day, or even 15 minutes before the rounds commence.
Well, so if we're talking about
not everyone has that option, but yes, in Australia, there's a good chance that you know what's coming.
Well, if that's the case, then we got to go through back my checklist that I mentioned at the start of the show. Can your army answer these scenario questions? Can it hold in Drelia Depth? Can it do this in Knife to the Heart? Can it do this and this and this? If we can do that, you're good to go. Like that is generally it. Like have that checklist of like my best is like, this is for anyone now. Just grab your General's Handbook, write down like pretty much a short list of what the scenarios do and like how to win them and like what are their conditions. Then just go through your army list and then just be like, cool, can I do well with this one? Bang. Can I do well with this one? Bang, bang, bang. Yep. That's how you do it.
A great example, we had a discussion, I think, in the car only days ago, which is around Scorched Earth. That's a scenario that we don't see very often. There's eight objectives. We're traditionally used to trying to claim 4 to 6 objectives. Do I have enough units and bodies to be able to claim up to 8 objectives, to hold 4 and then kind of acquire 4?
No army does.
No, but if that's going to be a scenario that's coming to you, or it's a likelihood there's a chance it's going to be in your pack, you need to think about that scenario. To your point, with a checklist, what would I do in this situation? Do I just give up 1 or 2 of those objectives and really concentrate on 2 and acquire 2? What do I do if I can't hold and retain? Am I like a very high strike, go out and try to burn theirs before they get to mine, or what's the plan?
That's when it comes to practicing.
Yeah, I mean, like Knife to the Heart, for example, is one that I've always struggled with my free guild, because I don't have the movement shenanigans to be able to march up the board and claim that by turn 5. Without some, and especially in the olden days where you had to have 5 or more models, I didn't have 5 or more models that could really get there. So I had to play for the minor, or I had to find some really funny shenanigans. And obviously things like the Soul Screen Bridge now help, or the Uber driver, but it was a limitation. Or I had to say, look, my free guild just aren't the army that's going to help me here. I need to play with my kits. I need to play with something else. If that option exists for you. Kieran, anything you'd add to this?
I think you guys have covered it pretty well, honestly.
Sweet. Couple of last questions. Matt Davis has said, how many heroes do you think on average in a 2,000-point list? So assuming you're not Slaanesh, what's a good amount of heroes you want to have? Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 2?
I generally aim for 3 or 4. I think that's generally a good mix for most armies. And like some of them will probably be cheap. 1 or 2 might be more expensive, but like I usually aim for 3 or 4. So like, it's just to get like casters, especially in prayers, whatever I need.
Let's look at 3 places of arcane power or whatever. It's 3 objectives, heroes hold it. If you do 3 heroes, you're probably one dies, you can only hold 2, and then when the other one dies, done. You got 1 left. 4, you always have a backup. So I think 4 is actually a sweet spot. 3 or 4 is a sweet spot. And yeah, and also it really depends on what kind of heroes you have in your army. Like, for example, battle mages are squishy as all hell.
Yeah.
And like anything on foot really is like a 6 or 7 wound hero, pretty much with a 4 up or 5 up save, unless you're a Stormcast with a 3 up save. You're probably going to get squished.
My kits, I was running around probably 5 to 6 on average, because they're cheap. They've got 4 wounds at most. They're just really squishy. So
but then you also have, but your kits also have some bigger heroes though that can be a bit more durable, but they're just very more point. That makes your army very top heavy.
Yeah, I mean, my last kits list was like six little wizards. I had Scragrot, which is 220. He's probably the most durable, but it was only 6 wounds. You know, he's still not as powerful as Morathi. You know, a Stormcast wizard is 140, 160. versus a grot one, which is like 80 to 90. So I think points as well as choices. But I think on average, Kieran, you nailed it. I think 3 to 5, kind of 4 is kind of the sweet spot. I think to your point as well, Liam, if there's scenarios that require 3 heroes and you only got 3, if I can take out one of those straight away, I'm denying you points from scoring. So
again, just looking at packs and you're just working out what do I need to do.
So we're hearing a common theme: the meta, practice, and the packs. So I think they're 3 common things so far.
Like a good point is just your points allocation. So if you're running Nagash, is really good for duality, not so good for the free place of power because you won't have the points to fit in other heroes with him generally. Like you might get 1 or 2, and then you become like more reliant on Nagash. Whereas like say Gits, they have lots of cheaper heroes you can afford to fit in more. So it depends on your allocation for heroes as well.
Matt Davis asked around Centerpiece models, and he was saying that he found things like Alariel. He's come from a 40k background where they do have a lot of Centerpiece models, and he said, or he's asking around, at least he noticed that when he has a Centerpiece model, a Nagash, a Marathi, an Alariel, these big Archeon, they often seem to draw fire. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? Should you be taking these types of heroes to draw fire and accept that? Or do you think it's a good strategy to not take them, to spread out those attacks, or, not concentrate people towards a certain path?
Depends on what you're going for, I guess. Like, say for Bone Reapers, mentioning Nagash again, in a Bone Reapers army, Nagash is ridiculously tough. He's got a 2-up save, rerolling once, and a 4-up against mortal wounds. Like, you're not going to get through him that easily. So you want him to soak up some damage because he can heal himself too. Whereas
like a Gotrek, right? Like Gotrek's 500
yeah, exactly.
points. It's one-fourth of your army if it's a 2,000-point battle. Gotrek's on the table. Does everyone attack him? Do they ignore him? Like, is that a good strategy?
If you're taking this model that's presenting your opponent with a difficult choice, that model's worth it. That's the way I say it. It's like,
Agreed.
I think the question as well for me is, what do you do with the rest of the points? If Marathi is going to cop the attention, that means I've got 1,500 points or 1,400 points or 1,600 points to be unwounded while people focus on Marathi or Gotrek, and they can do their thing. So if I can maximize that and kind of avoid that focused fire, or I draw them that way, then I might be able to surprise them with something different or something hard hitting, while they're so freaking out about the Ghoul King on Terrorgeist. Cool, I'm going to hit you with something else. I'm going to hit you with horrors. I'm going to hit you with something different.
Yeah.
Cool. And then the last question, we've gone through a lot of questions, so this has been pretty cool. The last question is coming from Chaos Spawn Wargaming. He's asked around the personal flair, and do you think it's a good thing to be able to include some of your favorite models in a competitive list, even if it's suboptimal? So
I'd say absolutely. I've not had, that's probably how I'm using it, but I've not had great experiences with Alariel in a lot of my games lately, but I don't care. She's great. I love her. I'll keep running her. Could I run something else that might be better? Possibly. But that's something I'd have to try. But it depends what you want. Do you want to run that cool unit? Run it. Just run it.
I did that with my Colossal Squig. It's probably for 300 points I could have run another Loon Boss on Mangler Squig. I probably could have done a bit more synergy, or even Manfred. I probably could have used those points better in a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. But I love those 2 models. I wanted to build around it. I accepted some of those limitations, but I was happy to have them on the table. So I would absolutely say, if you want to run a competitive list, again, it depends on your definition of competitive. Is it 5-0? Is it more wins and losses? If you're going 5-0, then Manfred may not be the right way to go right now, unless you're super practiced and you have some amazing strategy. Liam, any other thoughts on that one?
I do it all the time. Durthu, people say is not amazing, and like, let's be honest, sometimes he whiffs, and I'm like, cool, that's fine. Like, I wish, like, Durthu, yeah, it's his other nickname. But like, it's just, I would, like, if I wanted to like go full 5-0 with Sylvaneth, I would take him out, put in like a branch wraith or something extra, and then add another unit of Cone of Hunters with the artifacts, and just go 12 Cone of Hunters with bows instead of my 9. And just do even more shooting kind of thing. Like if I really want to be like, screw you guys, I want to win. But no, I want Durthu because one, I put so much time and effort into him that like he has to be in. And yeah, and like that's what I do. Like I do it all the time.
And for anyone who doesn't know what Liam's Durthu is, it has the body of Marathi, so the snake body, and then kind of going into a tree. So when he says he does work, it's more than just dry brushing some branches. It's an amazing piece that you can check out on Twitter.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like, yeah, I put so much time and effort into it. That's why he's in my list. And like, and also I've loved Durthu since I first got given Sylvaneth. Like, yeah, like he's just fun. It's also just really entertaining. Just either doing like 0 damage or 36 damage. Like we just don't know yet. We'll find out. That's the whole part of my game. It's just like, we'll find out how much Durthu can do today. So yeah.
Like when he killed 30 Grimghast in one go.
That was still a complete accident, and I did not want that to happen. Yeah. For anyone who has no idea what about this story is, I charged Durthu into Grimghast Reapers just to hold them up. Not to do anything else, but to hold them up. He comes in, swinging, just kills them. And I'm like, nope, that's not what I want you to do. I want you to just hold them up, not do that well. And yeah, I regret it instantly because they all came back. I was like, this is the worst thing ever. Yeah. That was him being a derp.
Yeah.
That was him being a derp, straight up.
We love Durthu. Yeah. So we have talked almost 2 hours on competitive list building. Is there anything else that you guys would want to add before we start wrapping things up? Actually, I'll end this with Rob Lewis's comment. So he's brought up a really good comment. He said he talked about cursed units, and he thinks that there is some awesome. He's just got units that just fluff no matter what. Do we have a cursed unit? So what's everyone's up? What just whiffs? What just doesn't do what it's meant to do, no matter how hard we try, no matter what we do?
For me, it was my Nagash. Every time I used them, it's like hitting on 2s, reeling 1s. I'd roll 1s and 1s. Had the 2-up save, reeling 1s and 1s. I'd never made the 4-up against Mortal Wounds. He just 800 points back then. I think he was of just he was just like a wet fart. He did nothing. He just stank up the board.
My one is Marathi's tail. Just Marathi's tail. That's it. Nothing else. It's just Marathi's tail. That's all I can say is Marathi's tail. That was not a fun time.
I share your pain.
I have one model and one allegiance ability. So this might surprise you. I'm like, how can an allegiance ability whiff? So I'll start with the allegiance ability, the bad moon. There's been so many times that I've had the bad moon. You roll a dice on a roll of 2 to 5, it moves 1 spot. A roll of a 6, it moves 2 spots. And a roll of a 1, it doesn't do anything. There's been so many times where on that dice roll, I roll a 1 and I roll it consecutively. The last game I played with my Gits, I rolled 4 1s in a row. And I've Scrag Rot, which allows me to control a once per game. I'm like, nah, surely I can't roll a 1 again. I roll that 1. So that allegiance ability is to me. And then the unit that continues to whiff is the Free Guild General on Griffin, who hits his opponents with a pillow. Everyone has luck with the Sword of Judgment and all those other weapons that he could have. My guy has no arms. He can't hit anything. There's no point. It's all about the mount, not about the guy on top. So that's why I've never gone Sword of Judgment, because he would never hit in the first place.
It's really funny you say that, because Danny Payne's one is the complete opposite.
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, my cursed unit, it's like hit on 4s, wound on 3s. I can bring it down, and he still doesn't hit. So that's the cursed unit, and why is that in my city's army?
What is your most fire unit, then?
Fire unit?
Yeah, what's the one unit where you know it's going to do well?
So
then we'll close it off, because I'm super interested about this.
I was going to say, I talked a little bit of smack about her earlier, but for me, it is Alariel. Because usually, if she dies for me, it's because I misplayed. But my God, when I get her into combat, like, she should not roll as well. She killed 10 evokers in one turn for me at last year's GT. I was like, oh, okay. And she was just doing that the whole tournament. I'm like, all right, I can't complain.
Yeah. Just like, yep, cool. Keep going. Anthony?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring a story in with one of our viewers, Matt Davis. Breeze Hammer, game 4, Sylvaneth versus Gloomspite Gits. Turn 1, I get a charge with 5 Fanatics into Alariel. I do 28 attacks out of a possible 30 with a Ren 2 damage 3, D3. Kill Alariel in the first turn. That Fanatic then rolls a 12-inch charge in turn 2 and does 27 hits into Durthu. Kills Durthu right away. So that 140-point unit just went on an absolute massacre. So my Fanatics are beautiful. Even though they hit on 4s, wound on 3s, they are absolutely gold. And Matt's in the chat. He's laughing his ass off because he was there. I couldn't believe those dice rolls. You roll 5 dice and they were like just 6s. And I swear he probably thought I was a cheat. Yeah.
Quick question. So we have Arcs GW to bump up points for Fanatics, yeah? Cool. Cool.
No, they should go down. I mean, they're good for me. They're But and Matt Tyrrell as well. Morghast with the halberds always fail him. I love them. They are so beautiful, but they fail Matt. So I would love to hear what your everyone's failed cursed unit is. Liam, that's in the show. What is your favorite glorious unit?
Okay. I got 2 very strong ties. One of them is the Terrorgeist, because that thing is ridiculous. It's just straight ridiculous, just stupid. My other one is my Cone of Hunters with Scythes. Those guys, busted. Like, they are so good for what they do. Like, I kid you not, at RuneX last week, or the other weekend, they were my MVPs every single game, just without fail. They were just doing just Cone of Hunter things. I just threw them at something. Like, cool, we'll kill that for you. Oh, we'll go here, we'll kill that for you. Ollie, you just want to hold that up? Yeah, we'll do that for you as well. I'm like, can you please stop? Like, just stop. Like, they're just too good. So that's my fire unit.
I'll let Games Workshop know they need to increase the Kurnoth Hunters up to 400 points for 3. So if they go up,
no.
Liam.
No, because I've asked for bows to go down. Anyways.
All right, we are at the end of the show. It has been 2.5 hours of glorious chat when it comes to competitive list building. Who needed the failed charge Mick Creighton? He couldn't be here because of work, but we've got Shadowhammer and we've got Kieran. Kieran, if people wanted to find you, I don't believe you're on Twitter. I don't know if you're on Instagram. If they wanted to chat with you and talk list building, where can they find you on the interwebs?
So yeah, I don't have much social media presence outside just Facebook, but I lurk in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar groups for Australia and Sydney. So hit me up in there, find me in there, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions and just chat because it's a great community, man. I love talking to everyone. Join
Instagram, join Facebook, just join Twitter. I joined TikTok today. I'm going to see if I can make...
Why? Stop. Why? Guys, how do I mute him? Mute him. Let's mute him. We're not supporting this. Mute him. How can I mute him?
Liam, Owen Jackson believes Kurnoths with sides are amazing, and he runs 12. So you've got a lot of friends today.
I'm just killing it today.
You are killing it. Go buy a lotto ticket. Go do something. You are on fire. Liam, if people want to talk to you, they actually want to talk to you after this show, where can they find you?
Twitter at Shadowhammer _ Facebook, I'm pretty happy to talk. I'm not even kidding. During the show, I've been sent 3 lists about Sylvaneth, which has been great. So I'll be going through those later. But I'm always happy to talk lists. Always happy to. And the Warhammer Age of Sigmar Sydney page. And then if you want any complaints, send them to Magro because he loves those complaints. So yeah.
Yep. And speaking of complaints, I did mention earlier that there is a feedback form when it comes to AOS Coach. I'm really interested to make some improvements for 2020. There is a Google form in the episode description. Would appreciate your feedback, and I'm rewarding people with some Games Workshop vouchers or some AOS Reminder subscriptions for about 5 or 6 people, based on constructive feedback, good, bad, indifferent, what you want to see more of, what you want to see less of. Is Liam the guy to talk about with Daughters of Cain? Both Kieran and Liam actually are great Daughters of Cain players, so they're both wonderful believers of the higher powers of Cain.
You know, because Cain is definitely alive, yeah? Yeah, Cain's definitely alive.
Totes and the goats.
Totes.
All right, guys, and you know where to find me. Thank you very much. This has been a blast. I hope you guys have picked up some things, some tips and tricks to become more competitive with your list building and think about the way you construct your lists a little better. Next episode, we're going to have 4 Masters players who literally days before attending the Australian Masters 2019, and we're going to probably have some interesting chats. So make sure to tune that one in. Until next time, folks, thanks very much. Happy wargaming, lots of 6s and 1s, and I think we've got to find up I think we need like an end quote. I'm going to make one up.
Get good.
No, that's trailers. We'll work something out. All right,
We'll work
see you
something
guys.
out.
Bye.
Boy.
See ya.